I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the March 2nd, 2021 virtual regular meeting of the Charter Township of Meridian. And we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we need our clerk to call the roll.
Supervisor Stika, Treasurer DeShane.
Present.
Trustee Jackson.
Present.
Trustee Opsimer.
He's here. He's just not,
I see you, but don't hear you.
here he goes.
Here. Sorry, it's muting and unmuting.
Thank you. Trustee Sunland.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski.
Here.
Clerk Guthrie is here, and Supervisor Stika.
Okay, so we have 7 present. Thank you very much. We have a presentation to start off, and I'm going to call on our manager to get that going. It deals with the 2021 Township Action Plan work groups and their updates.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, board. When we set our action plan for 2021, we came up with a concept of let's get more people involved than just the staff. Let's make this an entire team effort. And so we, about 6 weeks ago, the board put together the work groups, and there are board members and staff assigned to each of our 10 of the board's 10 goals on our action plan. And every other month, you'll get an update from all 10 of them. All of us are going to go round robin very quickly as called upon by the supervisor for a minute or two, just to update, maybe up to 3 minutes, but no more on each of the goals. So I'll start with COVID under the first goal. We have our pods still set up. Not sure yet whether we're going to use those or not. That's yet to be determined. We've been using the boardroom for taxes. The tax season is over. And of course, Clerk Guthrie has said she's going to be using the boardroom for her voting center. So all voting will take place in there in the protected environment for the people who decide to come in and vote in person. We've installed new drinking fountains that are much more, let's say, focused on protecting the employees. They're much easier to use, and I want to thank everyone for making that happen. We're working a flexible schedule here at the township. We have been for months. We continue with casual wear. And you say, well, what does that have to do with COVID? Well, there's a lot of things we're trying to do for people's mental health. It's more than just potentially of getting COVID. It's making people more comfortable at work. We have a once a month on a Friday, we have an hour that's devoted to mental health. We all get on a screen, we share stories, we get to know each other, and there's a few prizes available. And we average about 55 to 60 employees per month. And it's been a real popular thing. We still have a work from home program, and I'm proud to say that we've been safe and we've been open since June 8th, since the state of Michigan was reopened on June 8th for that little closure between March and June. We have been open every day to serve the public. That's kind of what we're doing with COVID. I turn it back to you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. We'll now call on our deputy manager, Derek Perry, to talk about the sustainability goal.
Good evening and thank you. The most progress we've made on that is in regards to the solar panel that's going to be sited at the Township Service Center. That's going to be a 100 kilowatt AC panel that will provide 100% of the energy use at the service center. For comparison, the municipal solar panel provides about 8% of our annual usage, where this solar array at the service center will be 100%. So we're pretty excited to see that forthcoming. We should have the agreement in place by March, and they're anticipating a completion by midsummer. So we should have the panel in place for peak solar use.
I take it that's your report.
That's my report.
Okay. We'll now move on to the diversity goal, and I'll call on our HR Director, Abby Titoff.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika. Hello, board. Well, since my arrival in August of 2020, township leadership and our trustees have been meeting regularly to discuss and plan our development and enhancement of our township's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and practices. We have created our mission statement, which is to promote and support a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce through training, evaluation, and action. Thank you to the board for recently approving our proposed non-discrimination and fair employment practices policy, which we have in place to remove the request for criminal activity disclosure from our township's job application process to ensure fair opportunity for candidates based on skills and experience. Our next planned step in the DEI process is leadership training, which helps us connect our individual understandings of DEI concepts and best practices and apply it to how we lead and model expected and appropriate behaviors, as we also look forward to including training for staff. Hopefully, we're close to approaching the return of in-person training opportunities with any hope. We look forward to sharing with you what we continually learn along the way, building upon strengths and learning to mindfully and collectively navigate our challenges. Honest conversation about our progress benefits the township and our residents and ensures that we're consistently striving for alignment and taking positive action.
Okay, thank you very much. We now go to the downtown Okemos and Hampton development areas, and we'll call on our neighborhood and development director, Amber, to talk about that.
Good evening, Township Board. The first goal and small task that we needed to complete this year for Village of Okemos was demolition for all 6 buildings. That was initially planned and proposed to be down and finished by the end of January. And we're happy to see developers were able to complete that before mid-January. The next step in the process will be to wait until after our wonderful thaw. It looks like spring might come a little bit early this year, fingers crossed. At that time, then the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy will have to do a final walkthrough since they have some reimbursement and some dollars in financing tied up in that project. So they are incentivized to follow that timeline. Following Eagle's final walkthrough, they will be permitted to do site or surface parking demolition. That's the surface parking lot, sidewalks, curb cuts, and all of those things. And begin preparing the site for site preparation, which is putting in footings and foundation for the big build. Pine Village will begin their demolition again, and this is 1673 Hazlet Road. I want to address that there's been some stirring and concern because a lot of Hazlet community residents are seeing the businesses that were in that block move. And they probably don't want to still be occupying the building when they're tearing it down. The beauty is that all of the businesses that were occupying that space have found a new home within Meridian Township, many of them within Hazlet. And not everyone was able to find a new location within Hazlet, but they did still call Meridian Township their home. And so I want to reiterate that they're not being pushed out, that the reason why they're no longer there is because we're preparing for the site. And so Hungry House was one of the last to find a new home in Meridian Township, and they will begin preparing their additional financing options. And that is my report.
Thank you very much. By the way, we're holding our questions to the end in case we have any. Next, we're going on to Derek again, the roads.
We're down to E already, huh? So with the roads, local road program, the plan is to do almost 18 miles worth of road work this summer. Currently, we're finishing up the quality assurance quality control, QA/QC, on the final designs. Expect to have bids received to us by the end of March and anticipate a May start. April will be doing the notifications to the residents. So that's where we are timeline wise.
Keeping it short, thank you. We'll now move on to the broadband goal, and then we'll call on Mr. Director Kieselbach for that.
Good evening and thank you. The work group has met to discuss this. Broadband, or what's referred to as high-speed internet. It's simple to say that we need it. It's more complex on the number of issues and how do we reach that goal. Our concern is some of the things that we're going to need to study whether it's through data collection or mapping, is how people are being served currently. What type of access they have related to the internet, the speed and the type, who is being served. Are there areas in the township that are underserved or have no service at all? Who are the providers in the township? The type of infrastructure that we have and what cost or expense to use that for the expansion of broadband. So these are just some of those issues. And again, one other issue is the cost to all this. So we really, that's our starting point, to need to know that information. This is being looked at by many communities in Michigan. I know there was some sharing of information where communities have reached out, hired consultants to help them do this data collection. So that's our starting point. The second thing is, once we know that, then we have a better understanding and be able to go out and actually do a survey of the businesses and the residents on what their concerns are, what their needs are, to finalize that. So that's in sort of a summary of what we're looking at doing.
Hey, thank you. Because we can't get enough of them, we're now going to call on Derek to talk about the MSU Lake Lansing MSU Lake Lansing Pathway.
Yes, a little more information with this one. So phase one, we're anticipating finishing up design and going to bid on that probably late fall. We have a significant TAP grant through the state of Michigan, and we need to execute that in order to keep those funds. Phase two, looking at the majority of that this summer, construction on that, and then phase 2B actually this spring. So breaking that portion of the pathway into a couple different pieces to make it manageable. We do have a pathway master plan, and the Transportation Commission will be meeting in actually the 18th of this month at 7 p.m. We're going to start the process of the pathway master plan review. So it'll start there, and I'm sure it'll matriculate to all the other boards and commissions that we have in the township, but that's where we developed the pathway map for the next 5 years. So I encourage the public to pay attention to that and provide us input in regards to that. Also with that, Parks Department was successful in acquiring a piece of property on Okemos Road, actually next to the service center. That's going to be utilized not only for a new entrance into Nancy Moore Park, but also kind of as a mid-trail hub for the MSU to Lake Lansing pathway. So one of the issues we always hear about is where are some restrooms available for the public. So we think we found a good site there. So look for that. The acquisition should take probably the rest of this year, and then we'll start design on that. So that'll be a nice addition to the pathway. And then also a project's being done in conjunction with the some dollars from the county on a new pathway trails map. So the residents can have a nice pocket map to take out and about when they're going to plan their bike trips or visit parks. So we've got some dollars again from the county for that too. So a lot of projects going on with your pathway system.
Okay. Thank you very much. And because obviously he's 4 times better than his Boston manager, we have again, Derek.
Man, poor manager's getting some zingers tonight.
Here.
So the signs, we've contracted with Corbin Design out of Traverse City. They're a regional expert in wayfinding signage, and they're assisting us with a sign master plan. And that will involve our new gateway signs, new monument signs here for the municipal building, wayfinding signage here on the campus itself, and then potentially some park signage too. So they've just received our brand logos and colors. So we're very excited to get their preliminary design plan back to us here shortly. So once that's in place, we'll present that to the board and be requesting some funding so we can start branding the community.
The hard part. Okay, we now go on to the website. I think we're going to hear from Brandy. We have a change of personnel here. Brandy.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Stika, and good evening, Township Board. So as you know, our township website is operated by Granicus as our website
software platform. And we are working with them on a refresh is what this project is called, because it's not a brand new website. It's a refresh in design, look and feel of our current website with the same CMS, the back end of the website, if you will, to manage the site. So that will be the same. We signed the agreement for this project. The township has accrued site improvement credits since the implementation of this website with the original contract in 2000, when it was launched in 2017. So the website refresh itself, there is no cost associated to that for the township. However, in the communications department, we did budget for some ADA compliance, additional training and assistance with making all of our documents, image labeling, and the site itself to be more ADA compliant. So that cost is a very low cost that will be covered by the communications department. This project is expected to take 6 months, and the very first step, Granicus will come in and analyze the data of the current township website pages and provide a heat map with the most visited pages, the most search responses to help with navigation and design work for this new website refresh, not new website refresh. I would like to point out that this is a website's a living and breathing thing. So every 2 to 3 years, it should be reevaluated and redesigned for the technology available. Since the implementation, Granicus has launched a number of new, they call them widgets, and different platforms that can be utilized to make the website more robust. So we will be working on that. And then I was going to say one more thing, and I've lost my train of thought, so I will leave it at that. Actually, I just found it. Thank you. The new website refresh allows for video content to be on the front page in the rotator banner. So we are very excited to be able to include more video content within the website. So thank you. That is my report.
And be careful with widgets, you know, law schools and schools of economics, using that term for years, you know. All right, lastly, we have our retirement mirror system, and our finance director, Miriam Madison, will talk about that.
Good evening, Township Board. And I'm here to wrap up our goals with the additional funding that we're going to put to our MERS pension. The township has budgeted over 4.7 million contribution into our MERS program for 2021. How we're doing that is we're using a 5.35 assumption, which is lower, a rate of return, which is lower than what MERS is suggesting us use. And then with that, we're going to contribute 1.5 million, specifically going to our police and fire. We really look forward to receiving our actuarial report from MERS within the next couple of months. I think we had a really good year last year, and hopefully we've got some good numbers to report to you here in the future. For the police department, to try to keep our police at our levels, we have 2 openings, and currently we're sponsoring 2 cadets into the police academy so that we can fill those positions. We also have 2 openings with our fire department, and they're looking at sponsoring some people through the fire academy also for that, to try to keep our numbers up for that. And that's it for my report.
Thank you, board members. We went through them all quickly. You know the 10 goals: COVID, sustainability, diversity, downtown areas, roads, broadband, the pathways, the signs, website, and of course, mirrors. Anyone have any questions they want to ask about these? Or express any concerns or add anything? I don't see any hands. Okay, so we'll continue on with our agenda. All right, next on our agenda is citizens addressing agenda and non-agenda items. I'd remind people, board members right now, and those others participating in the meeting, that it's a good time to turn your cell phone off because just like at the Sunday dinner table, we don't want to have cell phones interfering with what's going on and being polite to the speakers or each other throughout the whole meeting. And I would remind the citizens who I call on that we tried 2 minutes. I guess I got some some substantial complaints about that. So we're going to stick with the 3 minutes of talking. And we ask you to be polite, to address the board as a whole, not individuals, to talk about, not to talk about individuals by name, and to try to keep your remarks on point as much as possible. With that, I would ask Mr. Geebies if we're ready to call on anybody.
Yes, we do have public comments both via telephone and I believe we're likely based on hands. If people want to use the feature in the attendee area, they can, of course, use the raise hand feature, and we'll put them online that way as well. The first caller is a telephone call. Sir, can you please state your name and address for the public record, and then you have 3 minutes to make your comments to the Township Board.
Yes, my name is TJ Waller. I live at 5508 Okemos Road. And I have previously been the very first chef for Dusty's English Inn. I also own my own restaurant in our great community called Gulliver's, not to be mistaken with the old Toba Museum. I also was the executive chef of Albion College. And at present, I do a lot of personal catering for the statewide Blue Wave for Governor Whitmer, Julie Brixey, Dana Nessel, and others in our party. And my comment right now is that as of 2018, we passed unanimously the right to have legalized marijuana stores in Meridian Township. Now, I also understand that you have much to do with setting up ordinances, tax bases, and everything else like that. And so that, of course, would take time. Now, what I do seriously object to, being a person of color, I'm one of the few Black individuals that live in Meridian Township. I don't quite understand as to why we have to have a survey for an agenda that was overwhelmingly proposed. Surveys in my mind are only when you have serious contradicting sides. And that does not appear to be the fact if 61% of us, even in our community of only 42,000 or so, have overwhelmingly said we want these. And even with me, I don't want to go into Lansing in order to purchase marijuana. I want to stay here. I don't want to go into an area that is run down and I don't know if I'm going to be robbed or not. I like feeling safe in my community. And then also you have to understand that when here in our communities, when we build these, they will be safe, they will be regulated. Heck, I'm pretty sure they're going to look even better than my physician's office because we have really good regulations in this area. And I just don't understand this. It sounds as if it's a slight on individuals that are of color. You know, I work really hard to have lived here for 30-something years, and I think that this is needed. I think that's about all I have to say.
Perfect timing, because your time just ran out. Thank you so much for your comments.
And we have another caller. Stand by, please. Ma'am, make sure that you turn your volume down in the background, but please begin your comments with your name and address for the public record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, when can I start?
You're going, but you're going to need to turn down the volume of the meeting in the background.
Okay, yes, my name is Caroline Raynette. I live at 256 West Grand River, Okemos, and I have been a resident of Okemos for 62 years. And I would like to know what the other persons on the board, why they are supporting, what are their views on supporting this retail recreational marijuana shop in Meridian Township. and how they think it will enhance the living here. I feel it is going to cost us more in police and protection. And having visited the areas of East Lansing and particularly Lansing, I really don't know how Okemos could call themselves a prime location if we establish these recreational marijuana facilities. I have no problem with the medical ones, but the recreational ones seems like there's plenty of them near enough, and most people would have to drive to them anyway. So I'd like to hear from the other board members and not the ones that usually speak about this. Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for our next caller.
Next, we'll be taking a call from JOFFEP LLC in Zoom. You have been enabled to speak and it looks like you're muted. Please remember to unmute yourself. Begin your comment with your name and address for the public record. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Township Board. My name is Owen Franks and my address is 334 East Washington Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan. I believe that without letting recreational marijuana establishments into the township, you would be allowing black market proliferation in your community. And when you have a state licensed provisioning center or retail outlet, there are surveillance systems in place. The police and fire department know the layouts and know they have access to any video footage. And criminals know that they are under heavy security. Whereas if you have black market outlets, which generally occur in someone's home or garage, customers are possibly getting themselves into dangerous situations. And police don't know where these deals are taking place. Permitting recreational establishments would make it safer for consumers and business owners to buy and sell marijuana product. The black market also produces product that may be laced with harmful substances, may contain mold, mildew, or chemical and even metals. And consumers could be assured that if they are purchasing product from a state licensed facility, the product has passed rigorous testing, ensuring the safest outcome for consumers. And finally, as a previous caller had noted, the citizens of Meridian Township voted in favor of the MRTMA at a rate of nearly 61%. So the township should not want to oppose the will of its constituents by declining to permit recreational establishments. I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a caller. Ms. Vancouvering, can you please state your name and address for the public record?
Joyce Vancouvering, 5882 Okemos Road.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Supervisor Stika, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to speak about the adult use marijuana as well. Regardless of which side of the aisle you're on this issue, I believe it's critical that we do a citizen survey. I've spoken to a number of people that aren't even aware that this is under discussion. So I think it's really important that we get more input from the community. And I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have May in the Zoom area. You've been enabled to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the public record, please.
My name is Mei Yo. I'm living in 2690 Morning Glory Drive, Okemos. I'm also want to talk about the topic about opening recreation marijuana stores in Meridian Township. I'm so surprised to hear some recent talking about the marijuana. It's a drug. It hurt our health. It has been established in the scientific world. If we go to the website of the National Institute of Drug Abuse, there are over 100 reference papers has been mentioned. that marijuana could impair our temporary memory, and also it could distort a perception, which could cause the driving be dangerous. Also, there is a study shows that if a non-smoker who exposed for over an hour of marijuana in an unvented room could have a positive test in the urine, and the follow-up study displayed the impairment on performance motor skills. So those are evidence that marijuana could be hurt our health. Why bring this kind of things to our community? And also, I went to the February 16th board meeting. It seems like this purpose to bring that is a financial reason. But if I get the number correct, it will be bring like over 150,000 tax revenues. But consider about the additional administrations, additional law enforcement, that could the salaries of this additional fees could easily pass the cost. So I just don't think that this is not a good idea to bring the recreational marijuana stores into our community. I have to say I have no problem with the medical, because for those special need patient, that is kind of compromise with their need. But for health people, there is no win for bringing this recreational marijuana into our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
May will be followed by Vance. Vance, you're muted, but unmute yourself, and you can begin with your comments with your name and address for the public record, please.
All right. Vance Paquette, 2226 Kent Street, Okemos. Just a comment on the recreational marijuana. Recreational marijuana is here and has been here and was approved by the township voters. Nevertheless, given that the township is primarily a residential community, it is important that in making the board's decision that you lean towards addressing the concerns, questions and concerns that residents have. The inconvenience created by the need for others to go outside of the township for their recreational marijuana usage is outweighed by the concerns and even anxiety of the residents in the community. In any event, there is no immediate need for recreational marijuana facilities in the township at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. More speakers, Mr. Geeves?
Yes, Vance will be followed by Mary Waller, please.
Hi, my name's Mary Waller. I live at 5508 Okemos Road. And if I'm to understand correctly, what is being considered this evening is whether to spend $10,000 on a survey of a random sampling of the township. And since this was already voted on, it seems like that has been decided by the people. I've seen the homework that the board has been doing. You guys are doing a lot of really good research, a really good homework on this. I saw the survey that was already done by Royal Oak. Somebody already did that. You could take their findings. We're not that much different from them. As far as our votes go, I just want to make sure our votes count. I don't want our votes to be dismissed by a small vocal group of people who disagree with something that the majority has already voted on. I mean, we've seen that happen a different scale. Thank goodness we don't have anybody in moose head ears running around protesting in front of the township building. But at this point, why spend the money that we don't have to on a survey? That's been decided. Just keep doing your good work, craft the ordinance. We trust you to do it. That's what we elected you to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a telephone caller. Ma'am, please begin your comments with your name and address for the public record.
Hi, my name is Manuela Kress, and I live at 1376 Biscayne Way in Hazlet. And one of the reasons I moved to my current house is because I moved out of my condo at Lake of the Hills because of my next door neighbor who smoked pot all day, every day. And I don't know if you're considering the smell. All you have to do is drive down streets in Lansing. And I'm very concerned about my property value. I bought the house in Hazlet because of the good schools, because of the nice neighborhood. And I'm extremely concerned about how my property value is going to be impacted by the neighborhood smelling like skunk weed when somebody comes and looks at my house when I put it on the market.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is May, but May's already spoken. That's the last hand we have raised. There's only one shot for public comment here. I see other hands going up and down. Stand by, please. The next speaker will be Kevin Louis. Remember to unmute yourself and begin your comment with your name and address for the public record, please.
Hi, good evening, board members. This is Kevin Liu, 2690 Morning Glory. So I sent an email to the board, to this board like about an hour ago, send my comments on opinions on, and there's some links there. So I was just trying to confirm that I'm gonna oppose the idea of creating recreational marijuana stores in this township. So I'm a long-term Meridian Township resident. And I moved over here because this township has been well known for its rich, safe, diverse, and education-friendly environment for raising kids. So, and obviously the real estate, my property value, yeah, is my major concern here. And Meridian Township, we really earned the primary community title, and we're all proud of being part of it. So we want to keep the hard work and keep the reputation there. So if we look at history, how we made this community prime, it becomes more clear the value we value the most is not for this community is not because the drugstore, something like this. And it is definitely not because we make it super easy for people to obtain the marijuanas. And also based on the research, some related research, adults with some college, but not a bachelor's degree, most likely to use marijuana. Yeah, I have a link in the email if you're interested in. So to me, the right way to solve this problem, yeah, is to create an education-friendly environment to raise our kids doing the right thing. That's how we solve the root cause of the problem. And the people in this community already know this because we worked very hard and earned this title, the primary community title. We never needed to have this conversation in the past, yeah, when we open a Costco store, because people know it, because what's wrong with right. We having this conversation is because people know this is not the right thing to do. So, and also I've learned the majority of our revenue is from the township is from the real estate tax.
Half a minute.
So to me, the best way to maintain this is obviously making this more attractive community, not by pushing people out of it. So I have a great confidence the board members will help make this primary community even better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
Mr. Liu will be followed by Miss Wei, I'm sorry.
Wait, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Name and record for the public.
Yeah, sure. My name is Wei Li. I live in 2565 Sophia Parkway, Okemos. And as an Okemos resident and a parent with 2 kids in school, I also want to echo people earlier spoke before me. I want to oppose the opening of recreational marijuana stores. And I believe the proposal should really be ended today without a public survey. So one of my concerns is a opting in may result in an increased use in the youth. So there's a requirement for the stores to be far away from school for a reason. And so that distance is there for an obvious reason. So among the top public schools, only Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids are only 2 districts in Michigan that is having this recreational use. And there's really no guarantee once the stores are opened, it will not negatively influence on public school in our district. And I also fully agree with Trevor and Shane and former township manager and Jerry Richards. It is too risky to opt in at this moment. And Okemos is number 1 and Hazlet is number 13 best places to live in Michigan. It's too risky to bring this in now. It is just simply too early. So one of the arguments I often hear from people is it's the same thing with tobacco and alcohol, but it's not the same thing. That argument is disgenuine. The obvious difference is those things are legal at the federal level. And also there are plenty of stores around us in the surrounding township, like Williamston and Holt. So marijuana is obviously very different because it is going to make us special in the large area. And the next thing I want to mention is the township board did make a promise in 2019 that the township wants to have a 1 year of experience before we opt in for this recreational use. And I can tell now that promise has been broken if you go ahead with this. So as officials, you need to keep your own words, and so don't break your promise. And about the survey itself, I mean, survey is fine, but I want to make sure the survey is fair and balanced. So how do we ensure that people in the surrounding districts, such as Williamston, they want to use our stores? How do we prevent them from commenting on do the survey in favor of establishing those resale stores? And it is a safety concern as well, because East Lansing has
half a minute.
Sure, has only 2 stores, and they have 100 police personnel, and also MSU has a lot to add to it. And we only have 50-something police officers. Do you have any plan to open more positions in the police force to, before you open those stores? Because previous commenters also emphasized safety, but safety comes with a cost. So without any personnel, in addition to what we have now, there's no reassurance that it will be safe as people wish. And the last meeting, I heard people speaking a lot to support this, but those people are from the marijuana industry. They have a financial interest in this. So we have to take their opinion with a grain of salt. Because our
time's up, sir.
Yes, so serve your people first before you put into the financial interest before our local people. Thank you.
Thank you.
May will be followed by Lynn Page. Lynn Page, you'll need to unmute yourself to make your comments.
Hi, it's Lynn Page, 3912 Raleigh Drive in Okemos. I just wanted to quote from statewide ballot proposal 18-1 that was approved by Meridian Township voters to decriminalize personal adult use recreational marijuana. What actually appeared on the ballot was a bullet point that said, create a state licensing system for marijuana businesses and allow municipalities to ban or restrict them. And in fact, close to 1,400 municipalities in Michigan have banned commercial marijuana businesses. I believe using the zoning ordinances adopted for medical marijuana as a template for commercial marijuana is excessive and inappropriate. I don't think Meridian Township needs 21 commercial marijuana facilities, including 6 provisioning centers. And I believe that, like most issues that come before the Township Board, this is a land use issue, and it has important economic, social, public safety, and environmental consequences. I believe recreational marijuana businesses will place a huge unnecessary burden on our infrastructure and the demand for public services. And I'd ask you to please continue to prohibit commercial recreational marijuana businesses in Meridian Township. I also have concerns about the timing of this initiative during a pandemic when residents may not be aware of this issue and/or may not have the time or resources necessary to participate in the discussion due to your virtual meetings. The accelerated consideration of this initiative raises a lot of questions about whether commitments have been made to commercial businesses without seeking input from residents and in the absence of previously promised data. Thank you for considering my input.
Thank you.
Lynn Page will be followed by Marcus Baldori.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, yeah, my name is Marcus Baldori at 2267 Mount Hope Road, Okemos, Michigan. I've lived in Meridian Township for 29 years. I'm calling in support of recreational facilities. Just want to reiterate what other participants have stated already. Essentially just the cost and continued delay of going forward with a survey. I think it's pretty clear that the majority of Meridian Township residents do support recreational marijuana being available. Anybody in support of medical in the community, those facilities won't be viable, as was stated in the last meeting, until recreational is allowed to go along with it. I think that the township would be better suited spending time crafting an ordinance that is fair and takes everything into consideration. I understand there's a variety of considerations and issues involved with that. I think that that's where the time should be spent. So, you know, in regards to people having access to this, to being able to join this discussion, that seems kind of strange. It's pretty easy to just call in. People have a lot of time on their hands. I think people are pretty well aware of this issue. So that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next will be Leszek Gawarecki.
You're muted.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you. Yes, hello. My name is Leszek Gawarecki. I live on 4568 Tacoma Boulevard in Okemos, and I am a long-time resident of Meridian Township. I have to say that I do agree with my previous speaker that the language of the ballot was quite specific about what we have voted on. We voted on decriminalizing marijuana, not on building facilities in our township. And I hear the language that majority of Meridian voters, Meridian Township residents, are in favor of recreational marijuana. Well, there is no evidence of that, is there? So I am actually against recreational marijuana building facilities, and kindly request that the township run an information campaign about the impact on our peer and similar communities, and that they organize consultation with community leaders, teachers, law enforcement, legal authorities, and even high school students, because most likely those will be the segment of population targeted by marijuana industry. and provide financial analysis, which is independent of the analysis provided by the industry. And finally, after the community obtains such information, I would kindly request an administration of a community survey. My rationale is that the industry representatives presented a very weak and highly biased case of our community prospering financially and increasing employment opportunities, and at the same time solving problems with illegal sales, and at the same time introducing a completely harmless substance in a secure and safe environment. Well, I believe it is quite unusual for all of the above to be true for controlled substances. We are also told that there will be a benefit of $150,000 or whatever dollars in sales. Well, where exactly will the money come from? Let's say if I spend $100 on marijuana, I will
Half a minute.
Thank you. I will not spend the same $100 on farmer's market. So I think financial analysis is crucial. So on the personal note, I just visited Wild Birds Unlimited in Lansing. I had to drive to Lansing, buy stuff, and they moved out. Who moved in? E-cigarettes. It's kind of sad. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have no other hands raised at this time. There are no calls coming in. I'm going to suggest we wait about a second to make sure no one else wants to raise their hand, simply because we've seen a lot of hands going up and down throughout the public comment. But I'm seeing no more hands go up, sir. The meeting is yours.
Thank you very much. We now go on to the township manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and Board. I'll be brief. You can expect the Prime Meridian magazine, the first one in a long time, to be in your mailbox within the next week. Our deer count is at 304. We have 25 more tags to go, 176 by the archery program and 128 through the police department. A well-managed program, and I credit the leadership that's been involved with it. There's a major rezoning coming up down on Jolly Road next to Kansas. It'll be in front of the Planning Commission on March 8th. Check in with our Community Development Department or Economic Development Office if you have questions. We met with the Okemos Library on a food pantry location. We've secured one. Location for one. The LEAP grant should be announced for public art, which we're hoping to have it at the marketplace. That should be announced in the next couple of weeks. There's a potential for a redevelopment on Grand River and Powell. That's where LaFontaine came in and clear cut, if you remember. And I guess they're in a potential purchase agreement with a developer of senior housing. We're meeting with them tomorrow, our Community Development Department. The developers are out of Virginia and South Carolina. Prevailing wages, I'll be sending you your policy on prevailing wages that was passed, I believe it was a year ago. That's being challenged, and we will be bringing that to you on March 16th to discuss, but I want to get it out to you so you can review what you have to decide how you want to go forward with that. The smart zones, I sent you some information today on that. Director Clark is working on that, and you can expect that also coming up in the next month. Some discussion on the LDFA, Local Development Finance Authority, and smart zones in joining with East Lansing and Lansing. And finally, ending on a high note, I want to thank Giannis Ashredi. Giannis Ashredi is on our staff. He's our one of our PEs, and he on yesterday celebrated 32 years of service with the township. He's one of three that helped design the Okemos Road Boardwalk. Remember, we said the cost of taking that externally, and Giannis spoke up. I think it was with Niall and maybe Jay, Mr. Perry, and said, hey, we can design this ourselves. And so congratulations. I did say to him, you know, you've got 9 years to catch up with Director Kieselbach. And he said, no, thank you. So I don't expect him to be here another 9 years. But anyway, he does a great job for us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. Any questions for the manager? Board members? Okay, I don't see any hands or anything. All right, we'll move on to the approval of the board member reports of activities and announcements. Treasurer.
Thank you, Supervisor. Quick report tonight First 3 meetings I've attended in the past 2 weeks. On the 17th was the CATA board meeting, which I am now the township board representative for. CATA is in the midst of renegotiating its labor contracts. They have been going, drivers have been going for a year without a contract. Both sides are pretty dug in on that issue, but there was some fact finding and hopefully a resolution soon. The 20th, we had our board retreat, which the entire board was there present for, and maybe at a future meeting, we can do a full report to the community on that. And then last Monday was the DDA meeting. I attended as a visitor, not as a participant. Today is March 2nd. It was the last day to pay your taxes here in Meridian Township. If you haven't paid your property taxes yet, after today, you need to pay them in Mason with the Ingham County Treasurer. Fortunately, our numbers for tax payments are very good this year, despite the COVID pandemic. 99% of last year's tax receipts are in. That's good news. So our financial position is strong this year due to our residents making a tax payment a priority. So thank you to our residents.
Thank you. Other board members? Any reports? Yes, Trustee Jackson.
On the 23rd of February, I attended the monthly Tri-County Regional Planning Commission board meeting. And one of the things that we managed to do is amend the current TIP, Transportation Improvement Program. And I believe that that particular set of amendments included the changes that the township has apparently sought at Grand River, Dda Road, and Central Park, which involves traffic light and changes in traffic movement. That's the end of my report.
Thank you so much. And the other board members? I'll mention that it was already mentioned. I had the DDA meeting on Monday, and we all attended our retreat last Saturday. Think for anybody else? Yes, Trustee Apser.
Yes, I just wanted to remind the board and the public that the Land Preservation Advisory Board is still looking at possible renamings for the land preserve. So if you have any input, please go to last month's packet for the Land Preservation Advisory Board and review the prospective names that have been outlined, and feel free to get feedback on that. And just one other issue of note to what Trustee Jackson reported on with the Dda, Central Park, and Grand River light. Residents, specifically the light changes having green arrows from Central Park and Dda onto Grand River, which a lot of residents have asked for quite fervently. And County Commissioner Mark Pelsdorfer, who also is working at MDOT, reported to me last week they're looking at September prospectively for that construction. Thank you.
Knowing how those things go, that's actually quite fast. Okay, anything else? Board members? I don't see any more hands. We'll move on then to the approval of the agenda. Treasurer.
I move the agenda be approved as presented.
Trustee Jackson.
Support.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. We need a motion. We need a vote on the approval of the agenda.
Trustee Absmer?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Stajka?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
And Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
All right. Motion approved 7-0.
Okay. Our first category, area number 9 on our agenda, is the consent agenda. This includes communications, the minutes of 2 meetings, the February 16 virtual study session, and the February 20 virtual board retreat, our bills, disposal of surplus items, a request for Section 61 review for proposed land acquisition for parks, and election polling location changes. Would someone like to make a motion? Trustee Wazinski,
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
ordered by the treasurer. Any need to remove anything or modify any minutes or anything? Okay. Any, all right, that's it. All right, we need a vote then, Ms. Guthrie.
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
supervisor Stikle,
Yes.
clerk Guthrie votes yes, treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
trustee Jackson,
Yes.
and trustee Opsimer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you all. Our attorney is here. Any questions for the attorney that's not related to items that are already on the agenda? Because I'm sure he'll be asked those at that time. Okay, I don't see any. All right, we'll now move on to hearings, which we do not have one today. And then the action items. So we have two. The first one is Powell Road PRI SAD number 43, resolution number 3. This is Mr. Perry.
Good evening, Supervisor Stikle, members of the board. As you're well aware, tonight before you is potentially the approval of Resolution 3. This is for the Special Assessment District to pave Powell Road about 1,600 feet north from Grand River to the northern line of the Silver Stone Estates development. The projected cost is $460,000. Of course, the developer's cost would be about 56% of that at $256,000, with the remaining percentage assessed to properties in the district. We had the first public hearing the last meeting, and tonight would be authorization for the project to proceed.
Yeah, I need a motion from someone to you'll find it on page 2 of our packet materials. Treasurer.
I move to approve Powell Road Public Road Improvement Special Assessment District number 43, resolution number 3, to approve the improvements in grade, gravel, and paved Powell Road and be completed by the owner of Silverstone subdivision, and to defray the cost thereof by special assessment against the properties specifically benefited thereby in the manner previously listed. Approve the total estimated cost of $460,003.62 and approve the special assessment district.
Would someone like to second that?
Support.
Trustee Jackson. All right. Mr. DeShane, any comments?
We discussed this last week. We got some pushback from LaFontaine, but that fell on mostly hollow words in this board after they leveled 400 trees and walked away from that project. I understand there is a potential sale of that property anyway, but the special assessment district is the right way to go. The road will benefit people and businesses on each side of Powell Road. Makes sense to parcel out the expense by their frontage on Powell Road.
Anyone else want to comment? Trustee Opsimer.
Yeah, Deputy Manager Perry, I just had one question. Is there any update on the one tree that we thought might be at risk with this project and the scope of work? Do we know if the project would infringe on the DRIP?
Mr. Perry?
Yeah, I have no new information to report on that. I think once we meet with the potential developer tomorrow, we may have some additional information. But again, I understand the goal of the board is to try to preserve those trees as best as possible. But it is challenging with those grades. If you drive the road, you'll notice it's pretty significant, but we will attempt to preserve them as best possible.
Thank you. Just wanted to see if there was anything new on that front. Appreciate it.
Good question. All right. Anything else? Any other board members before we vote? I don't see anybody, so let's have a vote, Ms. Guthrie.
All right, trustee Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
trustee Sunland,
Yes.
trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
clerk Guthrie votes yes, supervisor Stikle.
I will, yes.
Carries 7-0.
Thank you. We now come to this being March. We're at the very beginning of March almost, 1 day short. The resolution celebrating Women's History Month. This is something we've done in other years. It's a worthy thing to do. We recognized Black History Month. Now it's Women's History, so to speak. And Mr. DeShane.
I move to approve the resolution celebrating Women's History Month.
Ms. Jackson?
I'll support that.
All right, do we need to talk about this in any detail?
It's worth noting that we now have a women majority board, which we didn't have in previous boards. And it makes me feel very good about the future of this board and how well this board is going to operate. So we are fortunate to have a lot of women-led organizations and businesses here in Meridian, and our women majority board.
And as I look at some of the directors that are still on here, we have a number of women directors for the department hanging in there with the meeting as well. So yes, we are very pleased and very well served by the women of this township, whether they're stay-at-home moms or hardworking at some profession or a part of the township in terms of our boards, commissions, or even this board. Ms. Jackson.
Yes, I did note, as you just stated, that we did not include department heads and staff members in the next to last whereas, and I would like to suggest that we include them in the whereas that says women have played and continue to play a major role in the governing of Charter Township of Meridian, serving on numerous boards and commissions as the supervisor, treasurer, clerk, and trustees and department heads and staff members.
Excellent, excellent amendment. Is there a second to that amendment? Ms. Wazinski, was that a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of changing the language to include the department heads, et cetera, say aye.
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 Hands up so I can see them. I don't see any no's. I don't hear any no's. No no's. Okay, so we're back to the resolution as a whole. Anything else with regard to this? Ms. Wazinski.
I just want to expound upon the directors in our diversity, equity, inclusion meeting, last meeting. Did a little research, and nationally, women in leadership roles as directors is about 19%. Meridian Township is almost at 50%, so we're at like 40%. So that's just something to recognize and be very proud of.
And we are proud of that. They do a heck of a job for us. Okay, we're ready to take a vote, Ms. Guthrie.
All right, Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Guthrie votes yes. Supervisor Stajka.
Yes.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee Sumlin.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
And Trustee Opsmer.
Yes.
All right, passes 7-0.
Thank you. That concludes our action items. We now move on to discussion. And our first discussion item is 6503 Park Lake Road Open Space Easement. I think this requires an explanation from staff.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Stajka. This request for an open space easement comes from David and Joan Johnson, NJ Helmick Sod Nursery Incorporated, 6503 Park Lake Road. This is part of the state's farmland and open space preservation program. This open space easement is an agreement between the township and the landowner that the land will be maintained as open space. In exchange for that, there are certain tax credits available to the property owner, and also an exemption from any kind of special assessments that would be placed on the property. Our principal planner, Menzer, I think is going to share his screen as we go. Just want to show you the area that's proposed. It's located in the northwest portion of the township, approximately 57 acres. It is been a sod farm in previous times. More currently, it is being used for agricultural purposes. There are 2 existing houses on it and 3 accessory buildings located on it. I know on the map in your packet, you'll see at the north portion of this site, the property does go across and out of Meridian into Bath Township, directly to the southwest, or excuse me,
By the
southeast.
way, we are not seeing any of this.
Okay.
I mean, I have it here.
Yeah,
That's.
see if Peter is able to share that.
Screen sharing's been enabled.
Sorry, I'm just having an issue getting my screen ready. Lydia.
Peter's working his way there, Mark. Hang in.
Okay.
We do want people to see what you're talking about here.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice birds, cats. I don't think that's what Mark was talking about. Here it is.
So yeah, so the picture you have on your screen, north is at the top. This property is west of Park Lake Road, and Park Lake Road is on the right-hand side. And it's northwest of the former Walnut Hills Golf Course. You can see that the layout, and then directly to the south is the dead end of Skyline Drive. As I mentioned, that north red line that's outlining the property, as you can see, it goes across the field. To the north of that is Bath Township, and then that southern portion is located in Meridian Township. And again, as I mentioned, this is approximately 57 acres. It's currently being used for agricultural crops on it. The master plan shows this in a residential category. In residential R1, and then zoning of the property, there's a split. The eastern 17 acres is zoned RR, rural residential. The 40 acres on the western portion of the site is RAA, again, a single family category, low density. There are wetland and floodplain associated with this property. Regulated wetlands are located along the western portion of the property. And then you can see it in the green hash lines. And then the central portion of the site, and then to the west, that large gray area, that's part of the 100-year floodplain. And then directly south of the property, there is the township's land preservation property, which is highlighted in green on the drawing. So that's the drawings we have. Next is the process. This application, the way the state act reads, it starts with the township. The township board either has to approve or deny the request within 45 days. And as part of that review, the township is required to provide the application for comments to Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, the Ingham Conservation District, and the city of East Lansing. I did receive an email today from the Conservation District's Board of Directors, and they had no concerns or comments related to this property being put into an open space easement. If the board does agree to approve this, the state act does require the township to prepare an easement for it. There's 5 bullet points I put in your memo. Those are all from the state act. I just want to mention the first 2, where no structures can be built on this property without township board approval, and no improvements to the land can be made without township board approval. If the board does decide to deny the request, That has to be done in writing, and then the applicant has the right to appeal the Township Board's decision to the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. One of the parts of this is the length of the easement, or the time frame that that's going to be in place. The minimum is 10 years, the max is 90 years. The applicant has asked to place it in the 90-year time frame. The reason that a property owner, or the advantage to do this open space agreement, is that it does allow them to claim a Michigan income tax credit, and it also exempts them from special assessment districts. Those would be current after they are into the program. So anything existing stays, anything new after they're in the program, they would be exempt. And typically these are for sanitary sewer, water, lights. And if the property owner did choose to be part of the assessment district, they would have to pay for it. If they wait until termination of the agreement, then the special assessment cost, the initial cost, can be charged back to the property owner. No penalties or interest can be charged that. And you will see in your packet, there was an email from the Township Assessor, Dave Lee. He did do an estimate of the market value of the property. And as part of the application, he's also required to do an estimate of the potential development rights, that value. He indicated that he felt there was no value in the development rights. Again, the township has 45 days to make their decision. That gives you until your next meeting, March 16th, where you would have to make that decision. And I know that Mr. Johnson was planning on attending this meeting, so if you did have any questions for him, he hopefully he's in attendance, and I'd be happy to answer anything you have.
I noticed that there is a David Johnson in the attendance area. Anyone have any questions or want to make any comments? Yes, Trustee Jackson first.
Yes, Mark, over this 90-year period, this land can still be used for agricultural purposes. Is that
right? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Others? Yes, Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika. Director Kieselbach, can this agreement be broken within that 90-day period? Can they come back to the board and say, hey, we want to terminate this?
The owner can terminate it at his choice. Again, the idea was it's a minimum of 10 years. It has to be in the program. So again, I think if the board has concerns with the 90 days, that may be something that could be changed. The property could be sold, but that agreement goes with the property, so any future owner would be subject to that.
And then that if a future owner wanted to terminate it, they would have to go through the board to do that, or if the current owner wanted to, it'd have to go through the board.
They would have to go through the state, because once the board approves it, then the state handles the program.
Thank you.
Everybody got a grasp of it? Ms. Wazinski, trustee.
Thank you, Supervisor. Director Kieselbach, it says here on, I can't tell you what page, page 4 of the memo, that public access to open space land may be provided if agreed upon by the owner, and if the access will not jeopardize the conditions of the land. Has there been discussions with the owner regarding that, knowing that it's just north of Skyline?
Well, they'd have to go through land preservation property. I don't know that the Johnsons, at least in my discussion with them, were interested in giving any access to people to be on their property.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Apser.
Yes, Director Kieselbach. Piggybacking off of Clerk Guthrie's question, what is the process with the state to terminate the agreement after that 10 years? Or even, well, it's turned over to the state as soon as we enter into it, correct?
Right.
So what is the process with the state for closing the agreement if someone wants out of it?
I would have to do some research and check on that for you. I can have that for the next meeting.
Okay. And then, at least in my packet, I don't see Dave Lee's assessment and the finances.
It's on it's the very last attachment of the packet. I can tell you his estimated market value for the property was $154,950, roughly $3,000 per acre. And then he did an estimate of the development rights at 0. He didn't think that this property had that potential for development or the impact for future development.
Okay, and my final clarification, in the memo, as it outlines the income tax credit that can be claimed, there's a parenthesis and then or a comma, and then it says less 3.5% of the landowner's total household income. I don't quite understand what you're outlining there. It's at the bottom of page 4 of the memo.
Right. I have to say I copied that right out of the state act for the process for the tax credit. I'll have to probably talk with Dave Lee and get a little bit more information on it.
Okay. Just general comments. I mean, with the floodplain and wetlands consuming 80 to 90% of the site, I do think it's a good candidate for this. I'm unfamiliar with this process. This is something I haven't seen on the board before. And then the island that would be created, you take this and the land preserve there, that square that remains is land that the Land Preservation Advisory Board has looked at obtaining and has been in contact with the resident who owns that land. So all in all, it could create a really nice contiguous preservation area up through the county line, albeit this land would still operate at least in agricultural settings right now. So those are just my initial thoughts, and I'll turn it back over. Thank you.
Treasurer.
I agree with Trustee Opsimer on this. I think this is a good deal for the township, and I think I'm glad it's moving forward. I'm guessing the 3.5% waiver or 3.5% deduction on the tax credit is an attempt to make this available to most of us, but the ultra rich perhaps wouldn't be able to claim this. That would be my guess. It's not uncommon in HUD calculations to put them a percentage against total income. It's a formula, I'm guessing, to target who gets the tax break from this by the state of Michigan, but I'm not certain of that. But anyway, I'm glad this has been brought before us, and it'd be great to have some land set aside for 90 years for open space.
Okay. Any others? I think we're pretty much exhausted. So will this be coming back to us then, Mark, at the next meeting?
Yeah. Right, I'll have it ready.
Okay. All right. Look forward to it. Next item is the 2021 Citizen Survey. Is Ms. Clark leading this discussion?
I am this evening. Good evening, Supervisor and Township Board members. So tonight we're again discussing the community survey. I want to clarify that the reason we're having this discussion is because it is a 3-year survey that we do in the community, and the last time we did it was 2018. And so we are revamping this program again. Typically we do it with the National Research Center, and the board is entertaining an idea of doing the survey a la carte, and so to speak, to focus specifically on our community needs. At the last board meeting, you requested information on reputable organizations that could assist the township with creating and administering and analyzing our own community survey, and that the survey would be administered and created in an unbiased manner as possible. Director Perry introduced me to Cobalt Community Research out of Charlotte, and I reached out to MSU's Institute for Public Policy and Social Research. They both have experience dealing with municipalities and local units of government, administering specific surveys, specifically in our state. Both organizations have experience with the topic of marijuana in local communities as well. The survey, so Cobalt Community Research, they're a nonprofit. What I liked the most about their analysis, I would say, is that they will give you a review of your community's progress year to year and a comparison of your community across the state and at the national level, which is something that I think the board members were concerned about losing with the previous surveys, that you wouldn't be able to compare yourself across the nation, but you would be able to get that with Cobalt. They have plenty of experience working across the state and through cities and townships, and they did administer a marijuana community survey in Royal Oak, and that was attached. The questions can be very specific and pulled apart in analysis for demographic by age, education, where they're living totally in the community, what really specifically they're trying to support, where they're supporting recreational across the board, or whether or not they're supporting recreational businesses. They even break it down to where in the community. So that could be something of interest. Cobalt can do a one-topic survey for $10,000 or a community multi-topic survey for $16,000 with a random sampling at 1,500 residents, $1,000 for every 1,000 residents we would include in the random sample. Unfortunately, while I was creating this memo, I did not have the information from MSU. So you probably got several emails frantically from us this morning trying to make sure that you had the documentation from MSU's Institute for Public Policy. They're able to create, one thing I really appreciated about MSU is that it does not matter if you do a one topic or multiple topic survey with them, they will be able to provide both at the same cost. Their suggestion was to put it together. However, I reiterated that if the board would have very specific reasons as to why they would choose to do a single topic survey or a multi-topic survey. They did let us know that you could do it together. MSU does have an indirect surcharge. It's a part of the MSU's policy. So if we do choose the Institute for Public Policy for our survey, we would have to adopt an indirect costs policy, and MSU would take that, whatever that percent charge is, that would be the indirect additional surcharge. We did discuss voter registration. I know some communities have large disparities between the number of population and the number of registered voters. We have almost an 80% registered voters for our entire population. So both entities feel very safe using registered voters sampling and having the provision online. People have asked, how do you maintain the information and validity if somebody outside of the community heard about our survey and went online to take it? They will be able to keep the information from the random sampling and the online samples or survey results separate, but we'll be able to give a holistic view of the community at large by looking at both of the data results. I guess I'll just leave it for questions because there's a lot of information in here.
Well, I'll start out by mentioning a couple things. Okay, excuse me, I gotta move my lips here. We decided that we were not going to go with the firm we've used in the past. We're going to create our own, so to speak, but that doesn't mean literally creating our own. That means working out with a professional the survey content. Is that right, Ms. Clark?
Correct.
So we wouldn't like literally be drafting the questions. We'd give them the subject areas that we're interested in, et cetera, and they would be doing the drafting.
Yes, they would. They will intentionally request the information we're trying to ascertain. You know, they want to know exactly what we would like to figure out. Both, there's an opportunity to be able to ask one question in so many ways. You know, what services do you utilize out of this department? Are you aware of these on our rating scale? They've provided kind of the results, at least Cobalt was able to provide some of their results for their surveys. That's how they can break it down, as one question can answer a multitude of demographic results.
Did you look any further besides these two firms?
I did not.
Because I know there's a lot of other survey companies out there, especially in the Lansing area. Okay. The other thing is that we talked about having perhaps either in addition to or separate from the overall survey that we do every 3 years to find out where our residents are with regard to recreational marijuana. And you indicated something about, like, for example, the Institute could do both together or separate or whatever. Did you look into that general issue generally with these two potential surveyors?
Yes, so I spoke with both of them, and I mentioned one topic survey. That was just my generalized way of saying it could be the topic of marijuana. Yeah. If the board were to choose to go in that direction. So both entities are capable of preparing a survey on simply just one topic on marijuana, and it could be multiple questions that could dissect where, if the community was interested in putting them, where in their community, what businesses they would like to see in their community operate, and so on. They could do a multiple topic as well, which would include, you know, the Parks Department information, road improvements, police and fire, and so on. That's what I meant by multiple topic, covering lots of our services and programs that's offered by the community. So Cobalt could do one topic or a survey over marijuana for $10,000, including the cost of postage, or $16,000 to cover multiple topics, and could include marijuana as a topic. Michigan State would do it for $12,000 for the same exact. They could either include it all as one survey or separate them.
If we say Michigan State could do it for 12, you mean 12 twice or 12 total for both?
12,768 was their final estimated cost to provide us a survey. Whether it's a one topic survey or it's multiple topics.
Okay, so if we did two different surveys, it would be twice that amount.
Correct.
And now you moved on my screen, so I'm looking funny as I look around where you are. Okay. You're not actually bringing to us, though, today a recommendation of which firm the staff thinks we should go with at this point?
I wanted to wait for action on whether or not we were going with one or a multiple topic survey. Right. I do have a recommendation of what I would prefer based off of the suggestions and what the board has requested, but that's just my personal.
Okay. I will then go on and ask Ms. Guthrie for her comments.
Thank you, Supervisor Stajka. Does this not need to go through an RFP process? Is this something that we can just say, okay, we're done with this company and now we're going to choose this company without going through a bidding process?
I think because we considered doing it, I don't know if we bid the Natural Research Center. I don't know if that was a bid that we did in 2003 when we first started doing the surveys. I would think that we have the ability to create this and that this wouldn't be something we would have to bid out as a community project.
I think either the manager or Ms. Madison could answer that quickly.
Yeah. Well,
or Mr. Perry.
I was just going to say because it's below $25,000, the purchasing policy just requires 3 quotations. So we have the amount for NRC and then we have these 2 now. So again, it's not saying we got to choose any one of these 3, but we have the needed amount of quotations.
I'm sorry, can I?
No, go ahead, Ms. Guthrie.
given Supervisor Stika's comment that there are several survey companies in the area, I would prefer to get some quotes from people.
Ms. Jackson. You're muted.
Thank you. My understanding is that the quotes that you're using depend on the number of people surveyed.
Correct.
And in each case, you're looking at the possibility of surveying 1,500 people out of our population, 1,500 voters.
1,500, yes, registered voters for the sample, yes.
So what is the, I don't like the number 1,500 for 44,000 people. You know, so I would be inclined, and I don't know the science of choosing 1,500 regardless of what the population is, to get a sense of the preferences or so, you know, what is the discussion on that standard?
Well, I kind of based it off of the fact that in previous years, there was a traditional 3-part mailing that went to a 1,600 resident sample with the National Research Center survey.
There was a 3-part mailing? So would you explain how that worked for me?
In 2018, I believe what they're trying to say, it was a 3-page survey that was sent out to a sample of 1,600 residents in the community. And at the same time, the township had access for residents to be able to opt in and take the survey online.
You know, I didn't know that, and I was here in 2018. I didn't know there was an option to participate online, but anyway. So that, I guess that answers my question. And in some cases, they talked about different ways of surveying. In some cases, they're using telephone calls, and in other cases, they're mailing and giving people codes to go to a website. So the pricing doesn't change relative to which one of those styles of survey that you choose?
According to both of these entities, no. I did request that specifically. Would it change? The mailing and the postage may change if we increase the number of residents in our sample. Besides the services they provide, Cobalt Community Research prides themselves on being able to do these services for municipalities at a very low rate. So they're trying to keep their costs very low. And MSU, that's not necessarily that they're trying to keep costs low, but they have been able to provide the same effect for $12,768.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Officer.
Yes, Director Clark, I had one question in regards to Cobalt and doing the national comparisons. How do they compare with the national studies and compare us if we're doing custom survey? Or are they just replicating much of what's in the national survey?
What they're trying to do is equate what we're trying to gather, what information we're trying to gather or analyze, and then they can use that as a guide against national averages. They also have access, or very well versed in the National Research Center's analysis across the nation. And so they've broken it down to be able to take into account all of their clients that they do annual surveys for, and then take into the National Research Center's analysis. And I believe that is how they get their national average. Because they do provide most of their services for communities within Michigan, but they do have some partners outside of the state as well. I am very I appreciate the depth of information that they go into, and their analysis is all based on data and what they've gathered from their research. They are not about implementation, only about analysis of information.
Okay, but they do have to ask a lot of questions that are similar to the national survey in order to compare, so that they would be Cobalt in terms of replacing, you know, the firm that we have used that does this across the country. Cobalt would have to kind of replicate a lot of that, but then we'd have a little bit more degree of customization over just the 4 questions.
Right. And their expertise in doing these surveys is allow, you know, they'll be able to guide us to say, well, this is a question that was asked in a community and it was able to bring this kind of result. Is this what you're looking for? Okay. And then this is how you're going to break down that information.
Okay. And then did they share what the margin of error on their surveying is?
Plus and minus 5%.
So a span of 10%. That's on a 1,500 sample?
That's on a 1,500 sample.
And then did MSU, IPSR, did they share their margin of error?
They did not that I have right in front of me. I can try to go back to my previous email. I believe it was just about the same with a 25% respondent rate. Yeah.
So they're anticipating 25% out of the 1,500 come back.
I think actually less. They're expecting probably like a 10%, but I told them that I think that 25 is probably about right for our community.
We got like 21% on the national one.
Yeah.
If it's 25, sample size would be 375 out of our 34,000 registered voters.
And then postage is $1.10.
And did they share their, have they shared, I know they have the Royal Oak survey in here, but for Midland or Troy or their other clients, did they share one of their broader multi-question surveys?
They did not. They requested that information from the community, but since it's not public, that's not something that I was able to get in time.
A lot of communities don't publish these.
I don't know if every community of the information of every survey that they had was going to be published, and especially if I was going to be able to get permission in time to forward it to the board.
Okay. I would like
And you're a little bit on the quiet side. I don't know how you can boost yourself up.
It's my microphone. I'll try to speak up.
Okay, now I can hear you, but it was straining. Go ahead.
I'd be interested in seeing and reviewing one of their surveys, especially if they're going more towards the model of replicating what we've already been doing. Thank you.
Yeah. Others? Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Clark, for looking into this. Not sure if you did it in Jackson, but it sounds like you're well versed. I have a few questions. So I know that I read that MSU would be an online or a phone survey. Am I correct?
Yes, it actually will be online. I requested online to both of them. I believe they are just telling us what they have been able to provide to other communities.
Okay, thank you. So we talk about this voluntary respondents. We can restrict that, right? If we only give access to those who were randomly sampled, correct?
Correct. The random sample, that is why we want to keep the information separate. The direct mail registered voters allows us to know that this is a person that lives in our community and this is exactly how they feel in relation to the topic. And then in putting the access online will allow us to have anybody who wants to opt in and have a voice in conversation at any time, say what they would like to say what they wish. We can keep the data separate in the event that somebody were to go in and try to push a particular topic or a particular point of view inappropriately. We would be able to track that by IP. You could see that's something that they would be able to find.
I guess I'm just confused on, other than resident input, but if we're doing a random sampled non-biased survey if we allow for others to complete, then it's not random anymore. So that just, what would we do with that information? What's that information going to tell us? So that's just a question.
Got it. I think I wanted to be able to provide as many options for the board because we're considering two major big things here. We're considering a very heavy subject, or we're considering full community-wide subjects. I would think if it were going full community-wide, we would want the option for other community members who may not get the direct mail to participate in the survey. I did speak with somebody yesterday on the phone who said that they've lived in the township for 25 years and have never been able to participate in a survey. And so that was something that they were concerned about. If we're going to go through this to create it ourselves, is we should have an option for people to opt in if they're out of the random sampling.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So that is something that's still up for discussion then. Okay. Another question is, it wasn't clear to me. So I got confused, and this is probably just me and working on an iPad. Sometimes it's hard to go between, but for both organizations, they will also provide the analysis, correct? Not just the survey implementation, but the actual analysis of the results. And then I think you asked the question potentially was, would we want like MSU to review Cobalt's, and these are just examples, but would we want an outside agency to review the results that we get? Did I see that correctly?
Yes, I asked Cobalt that, and they said that yes, they're fine with the capabilities of cross information between two entities.
Okay, so you were just looking for accuracy and okay, excellent. And then my last question is, and I probably should know this, but why would we only solicit registered voters? Why would we only solicit 33,000 of the 42,000 we have? Is there a methodology behind that?
Well, I think it comes back to validating whether or not that person is in our community, and then them having a voice on the service, the legislation and ordinance, if that is the way that this goes. That is why they suggested we be able to provide something to voters by mail, so they could say, I live here as a resident, I've lived here for so many X years. They can fill in the information. And then depending on the topic, if it is multiple topics, having an online version so that people anywhere could say, yes, I utilize these services and I would like to participate or not. Considering that we're having the discussion of whether or not we're going to have a survey over marijuana, I wanted to try as best as I could, how accurate and unbiased could we distribute a community survey so that as many people could voice their opinions on such a sensitive topic. And then also, if you decide to not go that way, if you could just do a multitude topic and all of our departments, commissions and boards, the really things that challenge our community, that they could be asked and then analyzed.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all that.
Treasurer.
Thank you, Director Clark, for these answers. Any other questions being asked? Like Trustee Jackson, I think the sample size is a little small, particularly because it's about the same sample size. 1,500 is what we had gotten from the previous firm. We looked at those results at the 2 meetings ago, and we were really not happy with the results. Either the margin of error was way off, or we felt that they didn't sample. For example, they showed a decline in park usage from 2012 to 2016. And we know from empirical data that's just not true. So I would want to look at a higher sample size and find out if their margin of error goes down accordingly. It might be worth it for this board to pay more to get more accurate results. I agree with Trustee Wazinski that if we have an opt-in option, excuse the pun, to the survey, we are going to create problems. So we didn't do that last time. We were very careful about it last time. We didn't want groups pushing for a certain agenda to try and overwhelm the survey and Director Geebees told us how easy it is to manufacture IP addresses. He could produce 100 an hour if you paid him enough for it. So the IP address is not a unique identifier and it can be easily hacked. So that isn't a unique identifier. So so that to me, the only way to get accurate results is to have a select set, be it 2,000, 1,500, 4,000, whatever number is that gets us a really low margin of error and proceeding with that. To me, that lends itself to us doing a global survey that includes a marijuana question or two, so that we can include that, we get the rest of the results rather than having to pay for 2 surveys. That's my sense of it all. I also think we'll get better results if we include the marijuana question with other questions, because people will see this as a question within the whole community rather than narrowing down to just marijuana. I'm not sure we'll get the same results, but I would be curious to know if they think we'll get a different select set if we did it separately versus a combined. We're charging you with a lot here to produce this for us, get back to us on this. And just as we start off this meeting with the staff, board member committees, I would suggest the supervisor appoint maybe a 4-person committee, 2 staff and 2 board members that can, including Director Clark, that can work with her over the next couple of weeks to bring back something to the board. Maybe more companies, maybe some more ideas for sample size. I actually have a couple board members I think would make excellent for this. Our clerk and Trustee Wazinski, our clerk, because this is the business of the clerk anyway, having this information. And Trustee Wazinski, I think you probably have the most experience on the board with these kind of scientific surveys. I could be wrong there, but that's the sense I'm getting, at least from conversations we've had in the past. So, and then perhaps Deputy Manager Perry, who's done this in the past, along with Director Clark, could be a good 4-person team that could bring back to the board in 2 weeks some more specifics and even get some feedback from these companies about the nature of the questions. We all seem to like the St. Joe question survey questions 2 weeks ago. I talked about a broad range of issues. I would like to see what they think of a question set like that, since we liked how unique those were to the community and personalized, if you will, toward the community. That I think was a selling point for the board when we discussed this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. This survey is really, really important this year, and doing it quickly is, I think, not rushing it, but at the same time, not waiting another month before we have another report back from you, but rather working with you so you can give us something in 2 weeks that we can get close to acting on and maybe having this finalized by the end of the month. To me, would be a good goal for this board to shoot for. But I think it's too much to ask you to do this alone. You have a lot on your desk already. There's no reason why other board members and staff couldn't chip in. I'd be willing to, but I think there are other board members that would be give you better input on that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
I'll just say that I put your idea on the parking lot for now. It's a good idea, but I put it in the parking lot. But I want to make, I'll call Ms. Guthrie in a second, but I want to make a couple comments that I guess, and it's no reflection on you, Ms. Clark, because I know this is for your first go at this. You've kind of sprung at this from out of nowhere, so to speak. And but I expected that we would get from the potential firms something more than what you got from them. In other words, and it's really more a reflection on them, I suppose, something that presented what it is they could do for us. You know, how big their samples would be. If they had this size sample, what percentage of error could, would it be? I mean, if it was a bigger sample, what would it go down to? Something much more informative than the little bits that they each gave you. I thought we would get something more that we could sink our teeth into and decide, okay, this is the direction we want to go with this firm. And I don't think we've gotten that yet. And maybe the way to go is what was mentioned by the treasurer, but I'm going to call Ms. Guthrie next, and then Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Supervisor Steica. And while I'm flattered that Treasurer DeShane mentioned my name to be part of this, I don't feel like the board should be part of this because there are sticky issues that are involved, and I don't want anyone to think in any way, shape, or form that I had anything to do with questions formulated regarding broadband or marijuana or any other issues like that. I think staff is highly capable, and I think Director Clark is highly capable, and Deputy Manager Perry, with his past knowledge with stuff that he's done, is highly capable. I would like to see, and what I hear from the board is that we're looking at a multiple survey. I would like to see 3 proposals with quotes from Ms. Clark at the next township board meeting that the board can review and make a decision on.
Okay, Ms. Jackson, you were next.
Yes. I concur with the clerk on what she'd like to see next. And I'd like to respond to the supervisor's comments about what he didn't see. All of those things that you didn't see, I did see. There was one page that had links, for example, to a Royal Oak community survey and ways in which the Cobalt Group has analyzed that survey, has used those numbers and interpreted the results. And so, you know, it's not really a defense of Ms. Clark, but you know, what you say you're missing, I found in particularly the Royal Oak presentation prior, and I find that today practically I've been getting the same kind of information, though no examples of their surveys, as a matter of fact, from the MSU group.
Yes, that is, I guess I may have not expressed myself that well. I'm really talking about where they present to us what they can do in terms of accuracy and everything else, for how much money, et cetera. And, you know, how big a sample you need to take, where you take it from. You know, I agree with comments that have been made that, you know, you shouldn't have people be able to call in. You pick the surveyor so they can scientifically sample the community, not to have people just put in their input willy-nilly. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for an honest appraisal of where people are as far as the issues. You know, year after year we hear about the roads. You know, hopefully this time we hear differently on the roads, that sort of thing. So you know, maybe it's just nuance as to what I was looking for versus what we got. Although I did not go to the links, I will admit that.
I found it available for in the materials that were sent.
Okay, thank you. I apologize if I implied anything. I wasn't trying to imply anything negative. Just not on people here, just on the surveyor companies. But anyway, okay. Other people, comments? Well, for sure, we need to have this come back to us. Yes, Ms. Clark.
I want to make sure that I do this right, because I mean, of course, there's always a chance for some question that's not asked, right? But and I do appreciate your comments, Trustee Jackson. I tried to fill in as much information as possible that I could get from the surveyors that we reached out to. I know this has been very quickly. We actually met last Tuesday on this board, because we had 3 meetings in February, and February is a very short month. So it was less than a week for me to get them to give me their analysis, for me to really ask my question articulately: what can you provide to us if it was one topic or multiple topics? How much would that cost? How do you break down information, and what do we do with it afterwards? I will come up with some additional examples. I believe that the costs are not going to change so much, because I started the conversation with the companies. Basically, we would like to create an a la carte but unbiased and accurate survey. And they said, that's what we do. Tell us what you would like. So if we want the sample size to be larger than 1,500 residents, it can most definitely be. If we want it to be all mailing, and we do a whole mailing to all registered voters, then that's, you know, like $40,000, and we do a whole mailing to all registered voters, and we get multiple topics, and that's what it is. So it's whatever the township would like to budget for this and how far we take this. But I will, I want to clarify, I'm looking for larger sample sizes, margin of error, and additional proposals outside of the 2 that I've received tonight.
That sounds right, Amber. Anything else we're directing her on? Ms. Blazinski?
Sorry to come in late. So as far as sample size and margin of error, it appeared that both companies provided at a 95% confidence level. So are we looking for maybe upwards of a 99% confidence level? Because that would give you some direction on what sample size are we looking for. You're gonna have to tell them what you're looking for. And usually in statistics, we work in a 95 or 99% confidence level. So I don't know if that's helpful or if that's even what the board wants, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Good information. Has the board been happy with that, or are you looking for something more for 99? Ms. Jackson?
I would appreciate the information on what 99% confidence level would cost me, and how that is determined in terms of the sample size. But I think primarily what we've asked Ms. Clark to bring us back is more samples. I mean, more presentations and options in terms of companies to work with within those guidelines.
Treasurer?
I would agree that we do want a high confidence level, be it 95 or 99%, and they'll come at a different cost. But if that is what we get back from the companies that Amber is going to solicit, is there anyone on the board that would then feel that we could not get an accurate measure of the public opinion on recreational marijuana if that's what these survey companies are offering us? Is there anyone that would still doubt the results of the survey? Is my question, would doubt the results of the survey as being an accurate measure of the township's resident support or non-support of recreational marijuana?
Trustee Opsberg?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure everybody understands confidence. 95% confidence means that the survey results will fall within the margin of error of plus or minus 5%, 95% of the time. So there's a 5% chance that we are outside of the margin of error, that we have a very poor poll. So that's, if you increase the confidence but not increase the sample size, all you're doing is increasing the margin of error. Then our margin of error becomes roughly plus or minus 12% with the same sample size. So it's really the sample size that is most important. They're just telling us what the error is on the margin of error with that. So I think that's just important to understand. And just correct me if I'm wrong, Trustee Jackson alluded to being able to find other surveys. Was that in reference to the link in there to Royal Oak's presentation on their multi-question survey?
No, that was in reference to an earlier discussion about looking at more than 3 possible firms to or companies to provide the survey services.
Okay. Okay, I thought I heard that there was a link to an actual survey, multi-question survey.
There is in the Cobalt material. There is a link to an actual community-wide survey in one of their in one of the pieces of material we got from them.
I believe that Royal Oak did a community-wide and a marijuana, but I believe they were separate.
Right.
And the links show the one I included their full analysis of their marijuana because they provided that. But there is a community-wide survey for Royal Oak.
Yeah, I see the presentation. It's linked in the email from William. It says copy of broader community survey attached. So that I think the community survey was attached, but the link takes you to the presentation of the results and the findings. So I haven't seen in the packet an actual.
Yeah, there was no community one attached. You know, that's what misled me when they said the word attached.
Okay, just making sure I'm not missing something in there, but that's what I would really like to see if we're going to spend more money on this versus the national firm, what is the distinction between their survey, their multi-question surveys versus what we've been doing?
Okay. Amber, you're the one who has the task, so you tell us when you've got enough understanding to go forward, or you need more from us.
All right, one minute. Hold on, let me scratch down my chicken scratch here.
That's all right.
Okay. I think I have what I need to go forward. If you would like to see some more possible options for survey results, a better margin of error, I will go back and ask MSU to increase the sample size, and I can see what that does to affect our cost and what that would do to affect their margin of error, and why we should possibly pick them over doing the National Research Center, besides the fact that I don't believe, yeah, I guess the National Research Center, is that what you'd like me to do as well? Do you want me to do a full analysis of doing the same thing with National Research Center? Trustee Opsimer asked the question.
I thought we decided against the National Research Center.
I'm sorry, he just said, if we're gonna go with Cobalt, what is the difference between what NRC would provide?
We have that survey. That was in 2 meetings ago. That was the meeting that Supervisor Steichen missed. So we do have that to compare it to in terms of what questions they ask us.
Ms. Jackson.
Just one final question. Is someone actually asking to see the survey without the results? No. I mean, they want to see how the survey is structured.
Yes, that was my question to them, was the survey itself, and that is what they were having issue with totally sharing with me. Okay. Again, within a week. So I asked if there is a possibility of finding a way to redact maybe certain things that the community did not want to share.
Okay.
Working on that.
Okay. So if you can find anyone.
I mean, we still need to have to define what it is we want them to survey. I mean, we talk about the marijuana, but there's a lot of other questions. I mean, you know, that every year have been asked, or every 3 years have been asked by the other company. And are those the questions we want to continue, or do we have some different questions that we would like, or some different aspects of our township that we're looking at, including in this survey? You know, one of the things that Manager Walsh would always bring up is that he thought we could get better information that pertained more to us if we did our own, because some of the questions that were in that other group were so generic. Ms. Wozinski. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Sorry. Just raising your pen. Okay.
Yes. So
does that confuse you further, Amber?
A little bit. I guess my question is, are we doing a multi-topic survey? If we are doing a multi-topic survey, then the process will be to get input from staff, from board and commissioners on the general topics. We would lay out our questions and be able to go from there. But without knowing whether or not we were doing one or a multitude, I couldn't really go.
Well, yeah, I'm okay. I'll ask Ms. Jackson what she was going to say.
I would suggest that we focus on a multi-topic survey.
Yeah, my thought is that we're going to do a multi-topic survey, and then we're going to supplement or somehow include issues with regard to marijuana.
Or not.
Well, then we need to decide that. And,
yes.
Okay. All right. Multi-topic survey. All right. So then the next question is, will the board include questions about marijuana?
Well, I will make my little pitch with regard to that. You know, from meeting to meeting, we deal with these small things, minutia. They're not minutia in some sense, but they seem to be, and we lose sight of the big picture, the overriding principles and the township-wide goals, what I call the big thing. For me, that big thing is maintaining Meridian as the #1 place to live in Michigan, the #1 place to raise a family, the #1 place to grow up, to enjoy the middle years, to be a senior citizen, the #1 place to live as much as one can these days in harmony with the environment. And that big thing needs to apply to everyone in the township. to people with healthy incomes and people with small means, to people of every color, every ethnic group, every denomination, political persuasion, background, etc. So what's the issue before us? It's how locating recreational marijuana businesses in Meridian affects or bears on that big thing, that overriding goal. Yes, we the people voted to make recreational marijuana legal. Yes, there are time-worn misconceptions out there about marijuana. However, our issue is neither of those. It's different. We must look at the issue as to how it affects our overriding goal of maintaining Meridian as the #1 place to live in Michigan. Remember how this came to be. Our residents made Meridian the best place to live. Step back and take a look, and you'll see that our residents care about others. They care about education and children. They care about their property, its comfort level for them, and its value. So before we do something that may affect those residents and what they care about, that helps make this the community the #1 place to live, I believe that we need to ask them, our residents, what they think about this issue and what they want. It's one thing to vote on a broad proposition like whether marijuana should be legal in this state. There are many reasons to say yes. Decriminalization, medical benefits are just 2 examples. But it's another thing as to whether once marijuana is in fact available, as it is, including only a few minutes away from here, whether you want to have it, these facilities in Meridian Township, down the road near your neighborhood. We owe it to our residents to ask them, to get their input. How do they perceive it affecting the big picture goal, the big thing of being the best place to live? Saying no to recreational marijuana in Meridian is not saying no to recreational marijuana. One can travel 10 minutes or so to make a legal purchase, and one can then use it in a legal way within Meridian Township. It's not about that. It's about the big thing, the big goal. Meridian is the #1 place to live, to raise a family. In the end, the real question before us is, if we say yes to recreational marijuana here in Meridian, does it add to that? Does it detract from that? Or is it neutral with regard to that? That's with regard to the overarching goal, that Meridian would remain the best place to live in Michigan. We owe it to our residents to ask them. We need their input on this. And that's why I say it should include, Ms. Jackson, the questions about marijuana. Treasurer DeShane.
I totally agree. This is the biggest decision this board faced. It's bigger than anything we faced in the previous board term. We have gotten, since the 11th of February, we've gotten 29 letters to the board on this topic. 29. No issues come even close to this. There's lots of talk on social media as well. Social media is also the home of QAnon and other conspiracy theories. I honestly take board letters more seriously than social media commentary. We've gotten letters, both sides of people who said to us, I don't want to identify myself as being opposed to this because I'll be bullied. We've heard from other board members that people in support of this are afraid of speaking out. So I think both sides have their reasons they're maybe not speaking out, but nonetheless, we've gotten 29 letters from citizens in the past, essentially 2.5 weeks. By the way, those are running 28-1 in opposition to this. I don't think anyone believes that's a 28-1 support opposition to it overall. We don't know that number, but the number there is survey going on right now, and those are sending us letters, and the people opposed to this are organized, and people are hearing about it that are writing to us. So we need to do a scientific survey to find out what the exact number is. Board members cite the 61% that of support for it in the last in this 2018 gubernatorial election. That's true, but that was a decriminalization, legalization issue. So at most 61% of the voters support these 6 stores. We know from the letters and we know from our own experience that not 100% of those also support stores. Let's say 50% of them support stores, 50% just support the idea. Well, 50% of 61% is about 30% support for 6 marijuana stores. Take it up higher. Let's say 80% support it. 80% of 61% is only 48%. 70% is even less. So 61% is the number won't go higher because anyone that voted against recreational or decriminalization is not likely to vote for 6 stores here in Meridian Township. We need to get an accurate number. The state ballot didn't ask that question. Do you want 6 stores in Meridian Township? That's the question to be asked. We've got some information. I would also argue that Clerk Guthrie's election last August was a referendum on recreational marijuana. There was no bigger supporter of marijuana on this board for his 8-year term than Brett Dreyfus. We all saw that. He got talking about marijuana and he was on fire. He loved this topic. He would talk and proselytize and browbeat us, and he would go on. We had to call the question a few times. He was passionate about what a great thing marijuana was for Meridian Township. It was his issue. And Deborah cleaning up the clerk's office these days, we see that other issues probably got ignored, but that was his issue. He lost 26 to 74%. I'm sure no other incumbent in the state of Michigan lost by that number last year. A lot of it was Deborah ran a great campaign and she had great help from many of us in this meeting. Some of that vote was a vote on Brett's unbridled support for marijuana in Meridian Township. So there's lots of data points here, not just the state referendum. I don't think any of them give us the accurate answer right now. We don't have that accurate answer, and we've got to take this time to get that answer. And Amber, Director Clark is on the right track to get a scientific survey before the board to approve. We don't know that number, and we will know it, and there will be a margin of error with it, but I think we have to agree that we're going to assume that and take the results as they come back to us, and not if it comes back 55 to 45, the side at 45 says, well, with a margin of error, we could have had 55%. I mean, in that case, you're basically going to say there's no results except for a huge landslide that you're going to accept. We've got to understand there could be a margin of error here, but we've got to take the step to find out how the public feels about this issue. It's important. And short of doing that and to continue this discussion and starting to draft the ordinance in the next item on the board, I believe is premature. We need to get this data before we take any more decisive steps, and changing an ordinance is a decisive step. To do that now is to be picking out carpeting and furniture for a house that isn't even back, the design isn't back from the architect yet, or we haven't heard from the bank if we can even buy it. It's really premature and presumptuous. We owe it to our residents before we take any more steps towards this ordinance to find out what they believe about it. The letters tell us 29 to 1 that they're opposed to it. It's probably not that strong of a number, but it is, the indications right now is there's a lot of opposition to this. And for us to continue to draft an ordinance tonight without data that shows our residents support this is an invitation for disaster for this board. Disaster. Because what can happen is they can go out and collect 1,070 signatures and put this on the ballot. And if it's on the ballot, they're yanking it away from us. They're saying, we don't trust this board. We're going to put it up for a referendum because we don't trust this board. So if they don't trust us on marijuana, how do you think the broadband issue is going to go over with them? They won't trust us on that. How do you think the next police and fire millage is going to go over with them if they have to yank the marijuana issue away from us? That issue won't go well. How about the next time we need to fix roads or other huge infrastructure? If we lose the trust of this board, which we've enjoyed the past 4 years, we're going to have a very difficult time doing anything big in this township for a long, long time. And to move ahead with this ordinance until we have this survey back is a huge mistake, in my opinion. And we do that at risk of losing the trust of our 43,600 residents. We can have this survey by the end of the summer. We've got 10 goals to work on till the end of the summer. And to proceed with this ordinance tonight, or anytime before we have the survey results back, is an insult to our residents. We owe it to them to find out how they feel about marijuana in a scientifically conducted survey, and not to go by our gut feelings. Well, I think this, I personally, no, this isn't about personal feelings. It's about us acting as the board of directors of this township and making a decision based on what is best for the township, not our gut feeling, but what is best based on the science. At our board retreat, at least 2 members said, I base my decisions based on data and science. Well, I'm calling on the entire board to make its decision based on data and science. Wait for the results from the survey. From there, we can take action either to move it forward and approve an ordinance, or to stop the ordinance, because we've gotten a clear message that our residents don't want recreational marijuana, 6 stores as they're going to have. We'll have the data at the end of the summer. We don't have it now. This is no time to begin drafting an ordinance for something we don't have good data on. Thank you very much.
You know, if I heard Phil say that could be the end of the summer. If haste is of interest, I'm more than happy to go forward with 2 different surveys. We could go quickly with just a marijuana survey. In the meantime, then be doing the overall survey. I think we owe it to find out from our residents whether they think that this will add to, detract from, or be neutral with regard to us meaning Meridian, the #1 place to live in Michigan. We owe it to find out, what do people think? How do they feel? They're the ones who made it this community. Ms. Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand and interrupt you.
No, it was your job.
I concur with Treasurer DeShane on wanting to ask the people this question on the survey. And since you did mention my campaign and winning by 74% in August, I will mention that there were probably over, I don't know, maybe almost 10,000 people that I called during my campaign. And I had one person who reached out to me anonymously through text and did not want to share who they are, which is fine. It's no big deal to me. But I had one person reach out to me and ask me about marijuana, and they worked for the marijuana industry, and that's fine. But as you were talking, Treasurer DeShane, I wrote down the 3 top issues that I heard from residents last summer that I continually hear on a regular basis that is in Meridian Township schools. And that is roads, fixing the roads, of course, blight, eliminating blight from our downtown business districts and revitalizing our downtown business districts, and social equity. Those were in social equity, obviously, because of the climate at the national level. I had 0 people ask me about medical marijuana, about recreational marijuana. I had 0 people tell me they were concerned about getting marijuana. No one said any of that to me. So out of all the people that I contacted and introduced myself to, and talked about, you know, fixing, you know, administrative, you know, the election administration and making that better for the community. They wanted their roads fixed, business districts fixed, and social equity, be treated fairly in the community. So I do think it is important to not ignore residents. I think it is important to ask them to listen and to hear from them. And we have received a number of letters, and we've received a number of letters today, yesterday, in between the packet being published in today, and I hope all board members had a chance to read those letters, and they will be included in the next board packet. And so, you know, I don't think that it should be discluded from the survey. I think it should be included. I think it's a valid question. I think there are many valid questions. I think we have a board, I think in unison, as a unity, as a group, I think we all are concerned about and care about what our residents say and their opinion, and we value, I think all of us value them. I think we can all agree upon that. And so I don't know if anyone feels rushed to make a decision. I'm going to go back to what I said probably 3 months ago. I don't think it's necessary to discuss this at nauseum. And so I do want to see what the residents want to say in a survey before we continue having discussion every single board meeting. I would like to see them weigh in on it.
Okay. The Royal Oak, Cobalt did the Royal Oak Community Survey for marijuana, and they have it's an 8-part question. Well, it's 8 different questions about marijuana. So that's another thing that this board would have to consider is I don't imagine you only want to ask just one question about marijuana. I would imagine you would like some more questions about marijuana, and theirs relate to where in the community, if yes, if you approve, where in the community they would be, what licensing, what type of limits and requirements should the business have, and then whether or not they voted in support of decriminalization across the state. I would hope that the board would weigh in on the number of questions or the specificity of the questions regarding marijuana.
Yeah, our questions might be very different than theirs. But we're still discussing whether or not we're having those questions at this point. I've heard myself and 2 other board members. Anyone else want to chime in? I guess silence means that we're not going to ask any marijuana questions. Is that right?
We don't have it before us. I mean,
Ms. Jackson. You can't hear you, Pat. You're muted.
First of all, I didn't know we were at a position to start formulating questions. I thought we were still trying to determine who would ask whatever questions we ask. But if what you want is my opinion on whether or not there should be marijuana questions, I would agree if they are a part of a total community, a complete community assessment, as opposed to one survey for marijuana and one survey for the community assessment.
That's consistent with what I heard from Ms. Guthrie and Mr. Bishing. And I started there, but I said I'd be willing to do it differently if that's what the board wanted.
But still, I'm
no, I wasn't asking to formulate the questions. I was asking whether or not we're going to include them. That's in general. That's what I was asking. So you're right, and your answer is correct. Ms. Wazinski.
I would concur with Trustee Jackson. It was feeling more about validity of a survey overall, as opposed to the exact questions being asked in that survey at this point in time. I still have some concerns about including marijuana questions in the survey, not to say I'm not open to that. But I don't know if this is an appropriate time to talk about those concerns. I do think a multi-topic survey is the best bet. I think that's really important. I think, like Clerk Guthrie said, we do care what our citizens have to say. It's really important. So, you know, Director Clark, I think, you know, if we can get a few more, you know, examples, we can, you know, reduce the escaping my brain right now, but reduce the level of error and then go on to what do we include. I think that's where I stand right now.
Very well, thank you. Mr. Observer.
So one fundamental distinction that I see between the survey that the city of Royal Oak did through this vendor that Director Clark brought us and where we're at, they conducted this back in 2019 before they had taken any step under a medical or MERT.
Right.
So they were eliciting feedback at a much easier capacity because they were open-ended. They had all the options and tools available to them at that time to craft both ordinances, or in our case, there will be 3 ordinances at minimum if we were to opt in under MERTMA or adult use. So, I mean, our cart is before the horse. My concern is how you distill the ordinance, which is in our packet tonight, and it's pages 99 through 128. So it's a 29-page ordinance with overlay districts into a survey. And that's the other distinction on what Royal Oak did. They actually did what other communities are doing, and they just regulated by zoning. Well, actually, I don't know what their outcome was, but that's what their survey portended. They were looking at, okay, well, let's just regulate this like any other commodity. So if you have commercial zoning, or you can rezone to commercial, you know, would that, they were looking at that kind of model, or industrial, or professional and office. We went way and above that and created overlay districts with a small fraction of our industrial and commercial parcels and put them in that, or put them into those overlay districts and geographically disperse them across the township. So just right there, we're in a fundamentally different realm. So I'm still processing how and if all of that can be distilled. And then of course, we had the legal memorandum from our previous meeting. I forget how many pages it was, but it was quite lengthy. I think Matt's memorandum was 8 pages on case law, special use permits, the other jargon and legal terminology that come up. And the other thing that we have to remember is that we are into this process. We have 4 special use permits approved. So when we actually but when the applicants who won the lottery came forward and applied for their special use permit, that is the vetting that we go through, whether it's a drive-through window, whether it's large development of 25,000 square feet or more, whether it's wetland use permits. That special use permitting process is how we vet these entities and their ability to operate. We exercise sole discretion on a special use permit. We can condition it, we can deny it without any cause, and we can deny it with any cause. We have absolute discretion, and that's why we selected that process. So all of that is to say, I can't wrap my head around how you survey our process in the ordinances that we've developed and the overlay districts. But I can say that, you know, a lot of the public has engaged throughout the course of that development. It was a year-long process. And during the course of that, we had many residents sit in, and I saw an overwhelming majority of them have no concern. We had a lot of controversial developments that would bring out 50 to 60 residents from a single neighborhood while we were developing that ordinance. And then my final concern, just generally with, you know, this is a divisive issue. Let's just all be honest. This issue causes division. It's like any social issue. If we were talking about abortion and pro-choice versus pro-life or any other social issue, there's going to be strong feelings that people have held since childhood. You know, any social issue, people have very locked in positions. My concern is, given how difficult it is to construct a survey that reflects where we are at in the process versus where Royal Oak was, which was starting. Can we instill public trust? Regardless of how the survey comes out, people are going to be distrustful. So if you're on the yes side of the issue, you voted yes, and you passionately believe the township should opt in, does a survey with 350 respondents invalidate an election in which 24,000 votes were cast and the state had the highest turnout in a gubernatorial election ever? Conversely, if you're on the no side and it tracks closely, you might feel like the questions were not intimate enough and enough information was not divulged, or your viewpoint wasn't divulged. We've yet to see any data on crime that results from these facilities. If you look at Bridge Magazine today, there was a story published where the police chief in Lowell said they've had one call to their facilities, and that was an employee embezzling. It was not a patron or criminal activity coming onto the property. So I think either way, there's going to be distrust. I don't see the survey reconciling that because I think everyone has very strong opinions. I know that, this is a tough issue. There's no other way to say it. And I do think legally we're quite constrained on what we can do, and the survey could give a lot of false hope. But I don't want to, ramble on. I want to turn it over for the rest of the board members to comment. Thank you.
Any other board member want to talk right now? Ms. Guthrie.
I think the survey to me means that we're listening. It means that we care. It means that we want to hear from them. I think it shows that we're an open communication board. I think it shows that we are the type of board, and correct me if I'm wrong with any of this. I think it shows that we're open communication board. I think it shows that we're transparent. I think it shows that we want to engage with our residents. I think it shows that we want to be inclusive. So that's what a survey means to me. And when there is a divisive issue like this, it shows that we care about these important topics with our residents, that we're together, and that it matters to us. That's what asking this question to me means. I mean, it is a tough topic. I mean, I agree with Trustee Osmer 100% that it's a tough topic. I also agree with Trustee Wazinski and Trustee Jackson in the statements that they made as well. And so for me, having Director Clark come back with 3 or 4 proposals with quotes that show a multi-questionnaire and how much that costs with some of the requirements that Trustee Osmer and Wazinski were talking about. And they know way more than I do on this topic in regards to level of confidence and sample size, and they're experts in that arena. I would like to see that as the next step that we are asking Director Clark to provide to the board. So I kind of want to, I kind of feel bad for Director Clark listening to us go on about multiple questions about marijuana, and she's kind of looking to us and what do you want me to bring next time? And I think we're all in agreement that we're not at the, I think Trustee Jackson said this, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're not at the developing the questions yet and what those questions are. Because Director Clark is really looking at, am I doing a single survey? Am I doing a multiple survey? And we all agree to do a survey like we've always done and that we would like her to bring this back to us at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think you summarized it well. We are not formulating questions tonight, and pulling out questions from other surveys or other people's surveys is not what we're looking for either. If that was confusing, we want to unconfuse that. What we want is to choose the right company to give us the kind of scientific survey with the kind of reliable results that we can count on. And that's what we want. And that includes pricing as well as information about those companies and the reliability and what they can do, what they can't do for us. Ms. Wazinski, you had your hand up. Oh, you didn't? Oh, you wave at me a lot. Okay. Mr. Deshane.
Thank you. I agree with Trustee Opsimer on a couple of points. One is that this is a divisive issue, and it's going to be a tough vote for this board to make because we're going to have a lot of opposition to whatever vote we take. Again, data behind that vote would help. I also agree with him that we've come a ways along this path already. We've approved 6 medical marijuana sites. 4 of them have gone through the process. They've decided not to continue. None have applied for a permit to open. They've stopped the process because they have told us the economics of opening a medical marijuana clinic doesn't work for them. So they've basically said to us they don't intend to open with just that license. Nonetheless, they are approved for that. I'm glad Attorney Kushel is still here because based on what I gleaned from the last discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Matt, that we approved 6 medical. And so unless we want to be sued by everybody and their brother, we're going to likely have to approve 6 recreational in the 6 locations that we have now. I think we also heard that we're going to have to go back and revamp that medical process, that medical ordinance to move forward if we want to grandfather them in. But it appears to be moving to 3 or 2 or 1 or 4 or 5 isn't really feasible. We've set the number at 6, and based on what I read as case law, we're going to have a hard time changing that number. That actually leads to the survey being a simpler survey than Royal Oaks. As Trustee Opsimer pointed out, they had a lot of questions to ask. We have one basic question to ask. Do you wish the board to opt in to recreational marijuana using the 6 medical marijuana overlay permits or districts? It's a straightforward question. Do you want the board to opt in using the 6 permitted districts to recreational marijuana?
I'm not sure about the wording of the question, but
no,
I agree that it is simple. It's not as complicated as was indicated. We've done all this work.
Essential question we've got to ask our residents. Do you want this board to opt in and convert our 6 medical facilities to recreational facilities? Because that's the essence of the question. We're not talking about 5, not talking about 7. We're not talking about new areas. We're talking about the 6 existing medical marijuana overlay districts, converting them to recreational. That's the answer I want to hear from our residents. Do you want us to do that?
Before calling on Mr. Kushel, I will mention that I'm not sure you read that right. I don't think he said that we're stuck with 6. I think he said we could go down to a different number, but we'll ask him that.
Supervisor, may I ask?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Wizard.
This is the next discussion item, isn't it? Are we moving on to the next discussion?
We're sort of doing both, yeah, at the same time.
Okay.
Mr. Kushel.
Thank you, Supervisor. In response to that question of whether you can reduce the number of available medical marijuana permits.
No. Question is whether we can reduce, have a different number of recreational than we do medical.
Whether you can have a different number of recreational permits than medical. Yes, but it's complicated and it depends on how you choose that approach. So the way we laid it out in the memo is that if the board adopts a similar ordinance to what it has for medical and sets a cap and says, you know, only 2 or only 4 retailer establishments, which is the twin to the provisioning center. What we've seen in other communities is a high degree of litigation. So there's a high litigation risk if we adopt a hard cap that is less than 6. And we've also seen in at least one community, even adopting a paired 6 to 6 may also still yield litigation. So it's hard to say. The risk does come down some, but not entirely eliminated. The other option would be the East Lansing model and what Trustee Opsmer raised in the study session, using the zoning provisions and your setbacks to limit where those establishments could be located and therefore naturally limit the number, but we would not put a specific cap on available permit. So that would, yes, it would limit it because there's only so much commercial space within those overlay districts and within potential setbacks that could be developed. But we wouldn't put a number on it, so you could see some recreational marijuana establishments different than your medical provisioning center.
Okay. What Mr. Opsmer knows and Mr. Deshay knows is that we actually were limited. The 6 places that we laid out in our overlays are basically, with our other criteria that we used, the only 6 places that you could put either recreational or medical. So, you know, that may complicate the analysis that you just gave, right? That's why I brought that up. We kind of know where things have to go. We don't know which storefront. We don't, that sort of, but we know basically where they have to go because of our 1,000 feet and our 500 feet and all the other things that we looked at.
Correct.
That's how we ended up with the 6 spots we did.
Right, and I agree that you're still going to be operating within your total 6 overlays. The question then is how many establishments end up going within those. So,
right. Mr. Opsmer.
Yeah, and Matt, in your memorandum from February 16th, you outlined how the township, through 5 or 6 different provisions in that scoring system that could also complement a special use permitting approval process that fits within the East Lansing model, how we can score and prioritize the existing permit holder status, whether it be by special use permit, the permit, because those are legally 2 separate things. And there were 5 or 6 of them I'm trying to flip through, but if you could go through those, I think that's just helpful relative to the overview that you just gave.
To make sure I'm understanding the question, you're asking what types of factors would be considered in competitive review?
Yeah, you guys had a list in the February 16th memo that you put together, but specifically there were 5 or 6 items that dealt with like existing relationship status with the community. Here it is, I found it.
Right, yeah, it's at pages 7 and 8 of that memo dated February 4th in your February 16th packet. And you're absolutely right. The current application status could be weighed or considered in a number of ways as part of a competitive review process, which you would use with a hard cap number of permits, for sure. And as you indicated, could also be potentially incorporated into other ordinance schemes. And what we talked about there is, so first is whether they've submitted an application. So the township received upwards of 20 applications into the lottery process. So even having submitted that application, was it complete? You could award points for that. Whether that application then moved on to an SUP process, you could award points for that. Whether a marijuana applicant then received an SUP permit, you could award points for that. Whether there are other SUPs that entity or potentially even, principals, because often you'll see LLCs owned by the same folks, whether they have other applications or SUPs that have been applied for or awarded, the completeness of those applications, how well those businesses function within the community. Those are all different things you could bring into a competitive review process. giving some acknowledgement to, yes, if you're co-locating a retailer establishment with a provisioning center, then that is one storefront within the township, which lends, synergies to that business and that operation. It reduces traffic and does different things. So you can award points to say, we're recognizing not only how that business would operate synergistically, but also we have familiarity with this applicant. They've already shown us a serious attempt and effort to get in and get an SUP, and that should be awarded. At the same time, then you have all these other factors that we put in there that, gives a new applicant who either didn't apply in the lottery or wasn't selected in the lottery, they still get a fair shot to rise above what maybe someone else, to rise above the person who did win that lottery. So you have all those other factors as well to consider.
And to put that in lay terms, that scoring, these criteria and how you weight them in a scoring system would be something that would be administered by the staff and could be a component of the special use permitting approval process through the Planning Commission and the board. So, and it's a way that can insulate the township from prospective litigation by not alienating those existing permit holders, which is our #1 risk based on my reading of your legal memorandum from the previous meeting on the 16th.
Correct.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, that is the approach that I think we need to take. And I really don't see many other ways forward. I think there's a lot of details within how you create the scoring system and how you weight it. But I think even your memorandum, just giving that bullet pointed list of 16 or 18 criteria that we can start using gives us quite the start. So I appreciate all the work that your firm has put into this. Thank you.
Others? Treasurer Shea.
Thank you, Matt, for that explanation and good questions. I appreciate it from Trustee Opsimer. We've got a lot to take in with this. I went back and looked, and we started medical marijuana in August of 2018, and we finished it in June of 2019. We spent 10.5 months on it. Some of that was spent on the overlay districts, but a lot of it was spent on the nuts and bolts of this ordinance. It's going to take us some time to get this right. It won't be as complicated in terms of where to put them, but it'll be more complicated in other areas. And we're going to have to really focus on this when we do it, and do it right, and do it so we don't get sued by everyone as other communities have had. I appreciate you using that word, invitation to litigation, Matt. We don't want that. We don't want to end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal bills. So we want to do it right. We want to be focused on it. But I think we want to do it knowing that we've got a majority of our residents who've said, yeah, go ahead and do this. Otherwise, we're doing it wondering if more than half the township residents are completely opposed to this. So if we can do it right, we need to do it with authority. We need to do it with authenticity that we've gotten from a solid, scientifically conducted survey. And short of that, guessing, we're not going to do the job we need to do. But if we're not guessing, we know we have support for this, and the 61% that supported it on the state ballot supported it in the 6 stores, then we know we should move ahead. But if we have a different number, we may have a different direction to go. We don't know yet. I think we have to know it before we can do this right. And to do it right will mean that these stores do not get to open in 2021. Well, a lot of things aren't open in 2021. It's a recovery year for a lot of stores. So I think our best hope for doing this would be that we get this done by the end of the year, and these stores that are approved, if that's what our residents say, approve these 6 stores, would have the green light to open up and to break ground in the spring of 2022 and be open that the following summer. That would be a reasonable, prudent, careful approach. And when you're talking public health, safety, and a divisive issue, do we want to be anything less than prudent and careful and thoughtful? I just don't see an upside to progressing with this ordinance until we've got clear direction from our residents. Without it, we're going to have, we got 5 letters today. We're going to get 5 letters every day for the remainder of this winter, spring, and summer. It's going to catch fire out there, and we're going to have all kinds of pro and con people coming at us. Because as Dan pointed out, people are divided on this issue. So let's take some time. Let's get a good survey out there. Let's calm this down. We are prudent people. This board has made good decisions in the past. We are all educated. We were all voted to be a professional board that reflected the professional and kind nature of our residents. Our residents aren't the mob that ransacked the Capitol. They aren't people that act as a mob. They are people that act thoughtfully, carefully, and with good information. We need to reflect that. And to wait 3 or 4 months till we have this survey back is not put an undue burden on anyone. We're not hearing from residents that these stores need to get opened up right away. We're hearing it from the producers. Well, we have lots of developers that want to break ground on new housing all the time, but we don't say, oh, that's your timeline. Go ahead and we'll figure it out later. We'll figure it out as you do it. We say wait until our planning commission and our board has looked at your proposal for new apartments or new homes. That's our process here in Meridian. That should be our process on marijuana as well. We need to get answers from our residents and then do this right and do it carefully and do it in a way that we get community support behind us rather than having the community mistrust us because we're going to proceed now and wait for results later. As Clerk Guthrie points out, that sends the wrong message to our residents. It shows we don't care what you think. It shows we're going to go do what we want to do anyway because we have gut feelings on this and we're going to follow our gut and not the data. Well, this isn't a time to follow our gut. It's a time to follow what our residents are going to tell us with a scientifically conducted and an analyzed survey. So I really encourage this board to put off discussion of this ordinance until we have good data back from our residents. It's the right thing to do.
We're discussing the marijuana ordinance. Or potential marijuana ordinance, I should say. Ms. Guthrie.
I too want to thank Trustee Oxmer for asking that question. I had one of the business owners contact me today and asked that very question about the vetting process. And I probably not so eloquently explained to him that it was presented at the last board meeting and that our township attorney spelled it out pretty well. So thank you for doing that. I too thought it was well thought out and well written. So I just wanted to make that statement. So thank you for asking that question. My question is probably as a new board member. So I hope it's not poorly asked or received, but in regards to, and maybe this is something I should know, so please don't make fun of me for asking this question.
Never worried about
that. In regards to ordinances, I thought they were done differently. Maybe I'm wrong. Do they usually come to, like, I thought for some reason they went to the planning commission and then it was sent to the board. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Just kind of wondering about the process of the ordinance, since we're talking about it, but we want to know people's opinion. Do we wait on it? I don't know who to ask this question to. Someone other than me.
Mr. Kiesel, you want to answer that from a staff point of view?
One of the things, there's a difference between what's called the zoning ordinance and the non-zoning ordinance, the police powers. The zoning ordinance under the requirements would have to start at the planning commission, and the planning commission has to make a recommendation, and then the township board would be the ultimate decision maker on anything that's amended or changed or added into the zoning ordinance. The non-zoning ordinance is strictly at the board level. It doesn't have to be referred to the planning commission. They don't have to give input on it. It's solely the board.
So recreational marijuana is not a zoning ordinance. And I thought I was hearing that it was.
It can
I
be.
think based on what and Matt can probably speak to it, but based on what's been talked about, there is a portion that's going to have to be amended in the zoning ordinance if we move forward with the recreational marijuana.
So that would go to the planning commission.
And they would hold a public hearing, make a recommendation, and then the final decision comes before the township board.
So the board is basically crafting this, and then it's going to the planning commission, and then it comes back to the board. Is that what am I hearing that correctly? Okay, thank you.
Anything to add on that, Matt? Or is it all set now?
No, that's well covered.
Ms. Wizicki?
I want to thank the clerk for asking the question. Usually we ask and other people need that information as well. So I appreciate that. It's helpful. And that brings up some of what Treasurer DeShane said. You know, I think we've decided that we're going to do a citizen survey. We haven't decided on which questions are going to be asked. We haven't even decided if the marijuana question is going to be asked. So although this is discussion, I do feel like the cart's a little ahead of the horse right now. But I was also unfamiliar with the process. So I may have just been a little bit of both there. So I just, yeah, it's a lot of information right now. So I apologize.
Okay. Is there more to discuss today, Mr. Opsimer?
Yeah, I just had one technical question for Matt based on a news story that I read. So Matt, I read a story from Port Huron. They had a voter initiated ballot proposal to opt in under MRTMA for adult use. It won and was enacted, and it had a provision in it that it could not be amended by the governing body of the local unit for 2 years. How is that regulated in MRTMA? Is there a cap on how many years they can put into that provision, or is there a specific number of years they can elect to insert? How does that work within the voter initiated act?
Right, so that's not covered under MRTMA. The language off the top of my head is that the initiated petition is to set the number of marijuana establishments within the municipality. So arguably a provision that says the township board or the municipality board in that case couldn't amend it would be outside the scope of the MRTMA initiative authority. The caveat then on top of that is these petitions are finally getting through and a few of them have passed. So we're only just now getting to a point where there's some litigation and it's not clear. There has not yet been a Court of Appeals ruling in a binding decision over how expansive those initiatives can be and how much ground they can cover. So in a plain reading of the statute, you look and you see that it says number of establishments. So then that makes you think, well, maybe they can't do that, but the scope of that still remains a bit of a gray area.
But it wasn't the number of establishments that couldn't be changed. It was the whole ordinance, or that section of the zoning ordinance being added to the existing zoning ordinance within the municipality. So my reading of it was that the local unit of government had no ability to amend anything within what the voters passed, which does make sense because I'm very familiar with the legislative process, and you need a 2/3 supermajority for good reason to overturn the will of the people. So is there case law, or a different statute that governs that if MRTMA doesn't?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Have you guys seen that in other, I guess usually what we see in local ballot proposals is like overturning a rezoning, things like that. So I guess Did you guys see that in overturning rezonings like a number of years before the parcel could be considered for rezoning, or?
I have seen provisions, perhaps giving a 1-year restriction on coming back for a new rezoning, but typically that's something already in an ordinance.
Yeah, we have that. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'm not aware of any provision in general law or election law that would create that same setup that you do see in the legislative process.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep.
Treasurer.
Are we on, oops, yes, sir. Are we on item C yet, which is recreational marijuana?
Yes, we've been talking about that. Yeah.
I thought we were, but I want to confirm that. Okay.
Yeah. It was pointed out much earlier that we had morphed, and I said, yes, we morphed into both.
Okay. I would like to make a motion. And the motion is this: I move to defer discussion of the recreational marijuana ordinance until after we have citizen survey results.
Is there a second?
I'll support that.
All right, Ms. Guthrie supported it.
Okay, thank you. And I think setting the ordinance aside, we can continue discussing this topic with our residents, with our educators, with our neighborhood leaders, our public health specialists. We'd be doing the data gathering we should have before we proceed with any ordinance crafting. We haven't done that yet. Neighborhood leaders in particular interest me because we went to them 2 years ago and 4 years ago. We wanted to get the roads passed. We took our road show out to them and talked to them about it because it was a big decision. Adding $1.5 million to their taxes is no small tax increase. Did it 4 years ago with the police and fire bond. We took that message to them as well to say, we are way overfunded. We are way underfunded in our police and fire MERS pensions. We're in the 50% range, and we should be in the 80s or 90s. They supported us because of that. We took it to them. I think we need to take this issue out on the street as well. And be it a Zoom neighborhood meeting or whatever the way we can talk to them over the next few months while we're waiting for citizens to raise, we ought to be getting feedback from our community on this. If we're going to ask them for money, we need to ask them also for input on important issues. We need to hear it one-on-one. We need to hear their responses, good and bad. It's really our obligation to take this and particularly at a time like this, when people are not in circulation the way they used to be. We've gotten several letters that have said, how can you be doing this during a pandemic? Well, it's the fair question. It's a difficult time for people to get out there. A bit overwhelmed by things. Hopefully things are getting better the rest of this winter and into the spring, but still people are in a lockdown mode. Most public spaces are closed. Restaurants are at 25% capacity. So we need to take the extra effort these next few months to reach out to our community and ask them, particularly our neighborhood leaders, particularly our community groups that we can talk to. There's lots of service clubs we can get feedback from. So we can use this time to gather more information. It doesn't mean it stops completely. But the ordinance crafting itself, I believe, is premature. And as I said earlier, it's an insult to our voters to say, we're gonna survey you, but we're gonna proceed anyway, because we have a gut feeling you want this, so we're gonna proceed. Well, that's not insult our residents. Let's put a hard stop on the discussion of the ordinance until we have a survey results to act on. That's my reason for proposing this.
And we've got kind of a parliamentary mess right now. Because we're having a motion on something where we're not into the action portion of the agenda where this has been previously discussed, so that you would normally have to have a motion to suspend the rules to make that motion, and then or it was a motion to table, in which case there shouldn't be any discussion about it. And you, I ended up calling on you, not realizing which it was, and you discussed it. So where are you, Mr. Deschênes?
Thank you for that feedback. I'll leave it as a discussion item, and I'll ask for it to be moved to an action item for next week's, our meeting in 2 weeks on the 16th, and give the board time to think about this. So it doesn't have to be decided tonight, but
You're withdrawing the motion. You're withdrawing the motion.
I'm withdrawing the motion.
Okay.
But I do want to vote on this in 2 weeks. And
well, okay. 2 weeks or 2 weeks.
And speaking of that, I've floated the idea with a couple of members of the board, but not more than 3. So we stay within our rules of a motion I'd like to propose in 2 weeks as well, that would expand our Ready Ride range. 2 trustees, Trustee Wazinski and Jackson, both spoke in favor of recreational marijuana because of the access issue. And that's a valid issue. We can fix that at our next meeting. We can instruct Ready Ride, CATA, to expand our Ready Ride boundaries to include the Pleasant Trees medical and recreational marijuana store on Merritt Road. It's within a half mile of the township. We already allow them to go to Costco over there, let them go to the East Lansing Aquatic Center. If we instruct the supervisor and the manager to request this with CATA, CATA has told us it's your Ready Ride. You tell us what its limits are. So we can solve that access issue immediately. So anybody that does not have a car would not be denied access to medical or recreational marijuana. For a $2.50 or $1.25 Ready Ride fare, they can get the medical and recreational marijuana that someone with a car would have. So I'll be proposing that as a motion at next meeting as well.
All right, back to our discussion here. Do we have nowhere else to go tonight, Ms. Guthrie?
I'm sorry. So for the record, when Robin does the minutes, nothing was tabled, correct?
Correct.
Okay, a motion was made, it was seconded, it was withdrawn.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right, then we'll just put back on the agenda next time. The survey, Ms. Clark will bring to us what we asked her for earlier, and we'll put that on as discussion, and hopefully be moving along with regard to that process. And then we will also put on the recreational marijuana. And we're probably as an action item, expansion of Ready Ride over to the Merritt Drive location. Ms. Wazinski.
Just clarification, Supervisor. So the Ready Ride's going to go on it for action, not for discussion?
We can discuss it right now. I personally think if we're going to do it, we should do it, but we can have it on for discussion if you prefer. But I just thought it was a kind of a no-brainer.
We would have to suspend our rules to act on it.
Mr. Opsiber.
I support the Ready Rides concept. I would say put it on for discussion just in case any other locations happen to come up.
Oh, okay, good point.
We've got 2 weeks, so who knows? You know, last time we did it, we had 3 different locations in which it made sense. So give everybody just kind of had that idea put on the table. So I'd like to think about it.
Okay. Yeah, the Merritt Road one is literally across the street from Costco, which is why it's kind of an easy one. But you're right, there could be something else. And I think the other marijuana location, because there's only 2 open in East Lansing, is much further away. All right. Anything else then? So those will both be, all 3 of those will be on for discussion next time. Then we move on to comments from the public.
If anyone in the attendee area would like to make comments, they can of course use the raise hand feature as before. Additionally, I believe we do have someone who wanted to call in, and that telephone number is 517-349-1232. And in the attendee area right now, I'm going to give Jeffrey Hank the ability to talk. He's currently muted, but if he wishes to unmute, he can state his name and address for the public record.
Hello, Jeffrey Hank, East Lansing, Michigan. Good evening, trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I want to comment on the adult use marijuana discussion, and I've been watching the whole thing. Very interesting. In full disclosure, I was one of the drafters of MRTMA and helped write the law, and I ran the campaign to legalize marijuana. So I've probably spoken to more people in Meridian Township in the state of Michigan about what they think about marijuana than anybody in the world. I'm also a license holder in the city of Lansing, and I happen to also be approved by the state of Michigan as a social equity applicant. So I do support the township opting in. The message I would have for you, and it sounds like sort of what you're doing, is taking the time to get it right. And the number one thing that was missing from this discussion tonight was the concept of social equity. And I heard Ms. Guthrie mention that. And this is something that's important to me. I helped write the social equity provision in the law and was part of the state work groups on that. And I've watched both Lansing, East Lansing, and many other communities completely botch this process. I do think the way Meridian Township engaged in the medical process was flawed. And I do think you are now somewhat trapped into this flawed and broken process with these 6 locations that you've approved. I don't think you should have done it in a land use way. I do think when you opt into adult use, it should be a licensing program, not a zoning program. And the number one thing that you should do as part of that licensing program is to first develop a social equity platform. Because what we're seeing in the state of Michigan is monopolization, oligarchy, for lack of a better term, the corporatization of the marijuana industry. And this is an opportunity. One of the reasons I got involved in this in the first place was opportunity and what had happened with the Okemos 7, all things very relevant to this community. And it disturbs me to see what is an opportunity for local residents, for middle-class people, for working class people, for anyone, except these big corporations that take out-of-state money or for coming from out of town, getting all the licenses in Meridian Township. Frankly, that's absurd. It's offensive. I wanted to apply in Meridian Township, and the way it was handled, even people I knew who had the select properties in the zones, I couldn't cut a deal with them because they had all these people from out of town coming, offering them all sorts of crazy promises, most of which fell through now. So I'd like you to consider, when you opt in, to first develop a social equity program. The state of Michigan's goal was to have half of licensees be social equity applicants, and part of Meridian Township is actually designated by the state as a social equity community, and that's the 488. Any of the zip codes that technically have still an East Lansing address. So basically your east side Meridian Township your west side has been designated by the state of Michigan as a social equity community. I think I'm the only social equity owner of any licensee in Lansing. I'm not sure of that because no one tracks this, which is another just baffling thing.
20 seconds left, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. I don't think most communities keep good enough record of this. So your goal should be, if you're going to do this, and whether it's 6 licenses or whatever, and you have to have that competitive process, to create a scoring rubric which provides for half of the licenses to go to social equity applicants. They don't have to be local. There's a state designation, but that would be great. So I encourage you to take the time, think this through, get it right, and create opportunity, and don't just continue down the current trajectory. Thanks much.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have other speakers?
In spite of somebody promising the call, the phones did not ring, and we have no other hands at this time, sir.
Okay. Other matters from the board? Seeing none, we come to an adjournment. Is there a motion? Ms. Wazinski. You're muted and you're...
I'll move to adjourn. Thank you.
Okay. And seconded by Mr. DeShane. Is that right?
Support.
All right. Any objection? Then we are adjourned.